Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, thank you for being with us on the second day of the conference. I hope that the first day was interesting for you and fulfilling. Today we are starting the day with two parallel sessions. This name of this session is Engaging Civil Society in Public Administration Reform at the Local Level. Enjoy. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Juliana Garay, and I will be moderator of this panel discussion. As yesterday's discussion, spotlight discussion on European level consultations, today we will be focused on engaging civil society and public administration reform at local level by sharing 6 examples from our grantees from the region. So today we have with us Ms. Vishnja Bacanovic from Gender Knowledge Hub, Novi Sad, Serbia, Ines Mrdovic from Action for Social Justice, Danilovgrad, Montenegro, Zarja Markovic from Humanity in Action, Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Wilfrida Deda, Social Center for Helping People in Need from Fush Aras, Albania, Ferit Murseli, Democracy for Development, Pristina, Kosovo, and Liliana Jonoski from Rural Coalition, Kičeva, North Macedonia. Namely, the WeBER 2.0 project has managed to achieve its goal of engaging citizens and civil society in public administration reform in the Western Balkans. It has been encouraged by the European Citizens Consultations and the European Citizens Panel, organized in the frames of the Future of Europe conference, where European citizens have been engaged, have been involved in discussions about the views, about their concerns for the future of the European Union. And consequently, these consultations, which included people all over Europe, have been applicable and appropriate also for the Western Balkans for public administration reform topics. So the local level citizens consultations were implemented through WeBER small grant facility, namely a regranting mechanism for local CSOs, and the overall goal of the regranting scheme corresponded to one of the specific objectives of the project, strengthening the engagement of grassroots and other CSOs in order improving the work of local administrations and bringing public administration closer to the citizens on regional and local level. WeBER 2.0 has awarded 31 grants for financial and capacity building support to the local CSOs in the region, and the awarded CSOs had an obligation to implement local level citizens events, consultations relevant to public administration reform. And the planning and delivery of the consultations were performed independently by them. So today we will have opportunity to discuss on 6 regional local projects from our grantees, specifically the embedded citizens consultations activities into the overall design of the project. We will have 2 rounds of questions, and each of the respondents will have 5 minutes for their responses. I will start now with Vishnja. How did you decide on the approach and the method of consultations? Which was your target group? How did you reach them? So
okay.
Here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here today. So we are actually a feminist think tank, meaning that we are dealing with gender mainstreaming mainly as a part of public administration reform, but also gender responsive budgeting as a part of reform of public finance management. Regarding that, our focus group, our target group, are mainly vulnerable groups of women and, of course, men, boys, and persons of other gender identities. And for us, it was important to reach them and to do it in a way which is accessible and enables their participation. So it should not be some business as usual consultations, because there are obstacles they are facing exactly related to participation. So what we did is that we organized focus groups in Roma settlements and in conference rooms with women with disability. We also used, so to say, women's organizations as a channels of communication, and also they are very aware of the position of vulnerable groups of women. Our main goal of this consultation was to actually do the kind of need assessment and to see what should be financed and funded from the public money at the local level, and how women's organization can contribute to transparency of local self-government. So we can talk about that in more details. I will stop now if you agree. So if there are additional questions, I'm here.
Yes, of course. And now we will go with Ines Mrdovic. Can you share your experience in reaching your target group and your method of consultation of those people?
Thanks, WeBER team, for the opportunity to be here. I come from Danilograd. It is a small town in the center part of Montenegro, near the Podgorica. Action is a very small NGO, very small, with only a few people, but despite it, we are very presented in the Montenegrin public and in the Montenegrin media generally. I have a short introduction before specific answer. I want to point out on a few circumstances or facts related to Montenegro and public administration in Montenegro. The reason is that someone outside of Montenegro can understand the context of public administration in Montenegro. We are a small country, we are a poor country, but our public administration is huge. There are about 50,000 employees in the administration at central level. Also, there are additionally 10,000 employees at the local levels in 25 municipalities. The other was 1 employee per 10 inhabitants in Montenegro. When you have in mind this fact, the key question is who stand it? Rich Norway, rich Sweden, or poor Montenegro? You know what I mean. Every year, our country borrows up to €500 million to cover budget holes. Excessive employment is one of the reasons for the huge borrowing of the country. It is a never-ending cycle. So, why do we have so many employees? When you look what is behind the scene, you will find political parties, political influence, you will find political interests. In Montenegro, politician or political party is everything, and citizen, unfortunately, is probably nothing. Many years ago, the party approach was discovered in my country. If you employ 1 person in the administration, you will get 4 votes in the election. 1 employee, 4 votes. The name for that is political corruption. We, the citizens of Montenegro, are continuously paying for this open political corruption in public administration. Through bad administration, through less roads, schools, kindergartens, daily care centers, whatever. Through discrimination of people who are not tied for parties. So, the core of our project was to develop a monitoring report or analysis with recommendation for improvement of the legal framework. Our objective of the project was to increase the transparency and responsibility in financial management at the local level. We chosen the method of informal events. Because we wanted to hear the opinion of different groups of citizens as well as political decision makers. In some cases, citizens were selected at random regarding COVID topics and the impact of that epidemic on tourism sector, catering sector, farmers, for example. Our project was focused at 5 local governments in Montenegro, including capital city Podgorica. For that reason, the meetings could be required only from the authorities in that municipalities. Also, we established contact with representatives of local self-governments and political parties. We primarily discussed the impact of a large number of employees on local expenditures and pointed out our legal findings and recommendation for legal improvement. Also, we wanted to find out from local officials the key problems at the local governments and the influence of employment on local budgets. The target groups were local officials, political and decision makers at the local and state level also, public administration, professors, civil activists, journalists and individual group or citizen. For example, we consulted a professor of public administration to hear an opinion from the academic level on the state of local government in the country. We consulted civil activists and journalists because there are no civil events and circumstances in their communities. We consulted individual groups of citizens to find out the influence of the COVID epidemic on their jobs and their general attitude about the quality of local services in their communities and employment in local governments. We reached the target groups either through direct communication or informal field meetings. Direct communication, for example, representatives in local governments, we called by the phone them directly and arranged meetings. That's all from my side for now.
Thank you very much, Ines. Now we will go with Zarya. You have been working with young people all over Bosnia and Herzegovina. How did you manage to organize those consultations events with those young people who were engaged into exercising the right to public information?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here and to present on our project. So when we developed the project itself, we were guided by the Humanity in Action Bosnia and Herzegovina's mission and its main goal, which is to target and educate young people on the topics of democracy and human rights, while putting special emphasis on the promotion of active citizenship. So this has largely shaped the outline of our project, which we titled Youth Accessing Public Information. And its main goal was to educate a selected group of 12 young people on the matters of public administration, its reform, and the law on access to public information. So the outline was quite simple. It was gathering the 12 people in Sarajevo for a 3-day educational training, during which they learned about the public reform, the public administration, its reform, and the law on accessing public information, and also the research methodology. After the educational training, we mentor them throughout the research process and the research analysis. The research process implied developing a public online survey, which they disseminated, and conducting research within focus groups with other people. We insisted on peer-to-peer knowledge transfer. So before the training, their knowledge were on the public reform on the PAR was evaluated, and then, of course, after the workshop, which showed significant increase in the knowledge itself. Like I said, the participants, after we insisted on this practical approach. So apart from the theoretical knowledge, we tried to instill on them. We insisted on the practical approach. So during the training, they first of all they learned about the existing law on accessing public information, which they found to be actually one of the most interesting tools that they can use as citizens. And then they were taught how to write a correct and well-written request, and they were encouraged to send as many as possible, which they did. They sent dozens of these requests throughout 2 or 3 months, during which they conducted the research. And then, like I said, we mentored them throughout the several few months during which they developed this online survey, which had a little bit over 200 responses. But we are very happy with the geographical distribution of respondents, which they came from very, very small communities, so it was quite diverse and very valuable information. And then the focus groups, which they implemented in their own communities with around 70 young people in total. So that would be a little bit about the outline, but we can go further into the findings later.
Thank you very much, Zarya. Now we'll go with Wilfrida. Was it challenging to consult the citizens of Fusharas regarding environmental issues?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, it wasn't that challenging as we thought it would be. Usually, we choose a target group to work on a project, but this time we had to work on different target groups altogether. Surprisingly, the community was very positive in its response, and its engagement was really surprisingly positive, because usually there is little attendance from the community. However, this time it was fruitful, you can say. And if I may go into the more specifics, firstly, we chose to focus on 2 main problems of our municipality, on waste management and deforestation of the area damaged. To reach our target groups, we had in total of 6 meetings with the community, and we tried to explain the problem and how it was affecting our way of living. So I think that was the reason for the positive response from the community. We organized a citizen committee, so it was composed of 36 people in total, chosen from the community itself. It was really comprehensive because there were people from all age groups, and women, men, young, elderly, so it was really comprehensive from the community. We tried to aim to encourage of the community engaging in monitoring the transparency and accountability of the local administration. Our way of approach, or the consultation method we used, was questionnaires addressed to more than 500 people. We tried this method to collect data and other evidence on the accountability and transparency of the local administration, and actually turned out really positive, because all the questionnaires were filled, and we can say, a full data on the situation. We held many public hearings with local administration as well as the Citizens Committee, and in the end we tried to be a mediator between the two actors, and they had meetings with the representatives of the local administration in the beginning, then two meetings with the mayor of the municipality and the secretary of the municipality's council, and the representatives from the citizens' council. All the data we collected, we presented them in a kind of a report in these meetings, so we had concrete proof on what we were dealing with. Regarding our local administration in Albania, the administrative units were changed in 2015, so they are still not very much functional, let's say. They are still trying to get the grip and understand the situation. So it was very difficult for them to accept us and try to change their approach. However, they accepted our requests. We made official requests in these meetings, and in the end, they guaranteed us that the situation would change for better. We asked for the raising of the funds on the waste management and the deforestation of the area. Thank you.
Thank you very
the
much.
The details maybe we'll share later.
Thank you very much, Wilfrida. Ferit, can you please share your experience for South Mitrovica and the engagement of the citizens, the target group, the manner of reaching them?
Juliana, thank you for floor, giving me the floor. Also, I want to use this opportunity to thank the GLPS from Kosovo and also the WeBER team for giving us opportunity to cooperate together and do this project in Kosovo. D4D started this project by trying to take to have like a case study, and we took just one municipality, which was Southern Mitrovica, and we started like doing this project by having like more on the methodology, was more on the qualitative way. What we did is that we did a focus group or consultation meeting with the citizens, municipal officials, also the members of the Assembly of Municipality of Mitrovica, and journalists. So we wanted somehow to bring all the stakeholders together and see what are the main issues that citizens, but also the municipalities facing related to the public administration reform. When we had the consultations, that was the first activity that we implemented. It was really interesting to hear, and we saw that one of the biggest issues in the municipality, but I think it's also on the national level, are the public hearings. It's a lack of interest to the citizens to be part of these events. Why is this happening? Is that most of the citizens have lack of trust to their representatives, because throughout the years it was a lot of misuse of poor management, poor financial management. Then we had like a lot of things that didn't being achieved throughout the years, like the simple projects that were being promoted during the election campaign. They didn't realize those promises. So all of these things made citizens to have this kind of lack of trust and lack of interest being part of these public hearings. What we did is, after that, we tried somehow to raise awareness between citizens and also to the municipal officials to have more like campaign awareness about being how citizens are important to be part of these public hearings. So what we did, we started publishing like infographics with data which were like related to these public hearings. I want to mention one thing, like in 2021 in Southern Mitrovica, were foreseen 8 public hearings, but just 7 were organized, and the total number of participants was just around 150 participants. That it means 20-something participants per one public hearing. That is really a low number of participants. So what we did else, we tried, we make a short video with the representatives of municipality, like director of finances. Then we had like some of the members of municipal assembly, and also citizens who were talking about the importance of being in these public hearings and how they can improve better, like performance of the municipality in offering services to citizens. So D4D tried to, as civil society, we try to be a bridge between like the municipality, between municipality officials, but also with between them and citizens. After that, after all of these activities, we also we conducted a brief policy analysis of what we took from the field, from these consultations, but also from the reports that have been published before on the monitoring work of municipality of Southern Mitrovica, and also audit reports that have been published. So this is in a way how we conduct the project, and we see it really important to do it also in the other municipalities, because not just public hearings is one of the issues, we have also other issues, but I think this is really important to make that engagement of citizens in the decision-making processes in the future.
Thank you very much, Ferit. Now we move on with Lila. You have been working with 3 municipalities and 3 planning regions on e-services. And what is your experience in connecting with the people from those municipalities?
Thank you, Julia. Good morning to everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and thank you for the invitation to present our project during this WeBER regional project. It was really important for us as a rural coalition to be part of this project and to talk more about the public administration at local level, or maybe I should say in rural municipalities. As an organization, we are working in rural parts in our country, in agriculture and rural development, but also very important part is the topic of which we are talking these 2 days, how citizens, especially at local level and in rural areas, are communicating with institutions, with municipalities, with mayors. So especially we have a very big challenge that we all of us were facing, that was COVID-19. And during that period, the crowds in front of the institutions, especially at local level, were made in the most of the cases by farmers, by rural population, because according to our research, only 4% of them are using some e-services that are available in our country. That is a very low percentage of using this type of services. So, and the most of them still, like more like 64% of rural population are still want to go to the institutions and to get service physically. So working in 3 different planning regions in our country and 3 different rural municipalities, we want to see how we could overcome these challenges with which citizens and rural population are facing with, and what is the, how to say, the best method to do it. Firstly, according to, we have done research with more of 300 participants in the research. Also, we have made some field interviews. And after that, we decided to put on the same table representatives of municipalities, mayors, and rural population. At the beginning, we think that this type of meetings will not be possible, but we have a very great success when at the same table are sitting citizens and also representatives of municipalities. We started to discuss how to overcome these challenges, what are the types of e-services that are most that rural population is most interested of, and how to make them available on a very simply and friendly use way. So we have done more than 10 meetings in these 3 rural municipalities. And also I should say then after that we have to work practically on how to improve, firstly, the websites of municipalities, how to improve the usage of e-services. And I think that this is the best way of how we should communicate it, because only with direct communication between the representatives of municipalities and the citizens, I think that that is the only way how we can get quality services at local level, especially how to get a bigger trust in our institution, and also the quality communication and improved communication that will bring also and the biggest local economic development, and also that will improve accountability and transparency of municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lila. And now we go with the second round of questions. And again, starting with Vishnya, you mentioned working with vulnerable groups of citizens. What is the outcome, the impact of the consultations, and how is their contribution considered?
On top on consultations, we also produced a watchdog report about gender-responsive budgeting implementation at the local level, which is not that usual practice, and there is no publicly available data about gender-responsive budgeting, amounts allocated for gender-responsive programs, or any type of report regarding to this. What is relevant is that gender-responsive budgeting is obligation in the Republic of Serbia at the local level as well. So we monitored, in a way, implementation of the legal framework as well. So it raised interest not only from civil society organizations, which was one of our objectives, but also wider public and citizens. We had some kind of promotion and consultations with citizens online mainly, and focus groups with wider public as well, and one short survey about awareness or level of information that people have about implementation of gender-responsive budgeting. So our objective was actually to increase attention that is given to this part of public finance management, and we succeed, fortunately, meaning that we have increased number of civil society organizations, firstly local, at the local level, who are informed and interested to monitor or to track implementation of gender-responsive budgeting. Also, we have very clear and specific recommendations about services and policies and measures needed by the vulnerable groups, meaning Roma women in Roma settlements, women who are in business or starting their business, women with disabilities, also older women, unemployed, and those who are not engaged in the labor market. We provide or published recommendations that should be guide for a local self-government in planning gender-responsive measures in the future. What is relevant to be mentioned is that cooperation with local self-government was not perfect, since we were not able to get data we asked for, and also we were not successful in organizing meeting to to try to connect civil society and local self-government. We tried actually to provide some kind of exercise how needs assessment and budgeting based on the needs and evidence should be done. And we have this kind of case study, and we showed it is possible and what is important, and we will continue to do the monitoring because now we have very simple methodology and tool for gender-responsive budgeting monitoring at the local level, and it can be used by other organizations in other municipalities and cities as well. I think I didn't skip anything important.
No, you were perfect. And what about lessons learned and the sustainability of this practice of citizens' consultations?
It should be done more. I think citizens are really interested if you approach them you're going to them, not sitting and waiting them to come to you, which is usual practice. So this is one lesson learned, and there is really important to do needs assessment and to see at the level of person, at individual level, what are the effects or results of measures and policies implemented. There is also a lesson about openness or readiness of public administration and decision makers to have a real dialogue with civil society, and this is something that we should work on in the future as well. I think, in my opinion, and based on our analysis, there is a big challenge with monitoring and evaluation in public policies or skills in development, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of public policies. So the gender mainstreaming or gender responsive budgeting is just a small part of the process, some kind of glance. So we have the issues with the core skills. And this is something that should be taken into account in further work with public administration, if possible.
Thank you very much, Vishnya. Ines, what was your experience with those 5 municipalities you work with, and which lessons learned and you will extract from your experience, and the sustainability of the practice of citizens' consultations?
Civil consultation very important for us to create a broader picture of the impact of overemployment in Montenegro, especially in that 5 local municipalities. Still, our analysis was dominantly based on official data collected by the free access information law and public available data. Related to the impact of citizens consultation, I have several conclusions. Citizens were aware of overemployment at the local or the central level. They know that is the problem. They agree with that. Citizens were less aware that employment eats money for the other needs at the local level. The end of the story. Also, they generally do not participate in policy making at the local level or the central level. They do not know much about it. They are not very interested in that topic. That is a reality in Montenegro, to my opinion. My general opinion is that we need more time, and that is the process who will ending for 10 or 20 years, whatever. I have some notes from our report, maybe that show more than my words. Domestic legal framework is quite solid in Montenegro and guarantees the basis principles of decentralization, local government. but there are numerous legal shortcomings which give room for overemployment and spending great budget amount for salaries. The development of other services for meeting the needs of local population suffers due to that. Our report targets the question of employment and budget expenditures for salaries in 5 local self-governments: the capital city Podgorica, Danilovgrad, Ulcinj, Pljevlja, and Petnica. Petnica is one of the youngest municipalities in the country. It is a town without gas station, just note. Can you imagine the town, local municipality that has to provide all needs for the local citizen without gas station? What else? Report shows that Pljevlja, Ulcinj, Danilovgrad, and Petnica from 2017 to 2020 generate in average from 19 to incredible 62% of the income from egalization fund and transfer from the state budget. Fiscal sustainability of these municipalities will be questionable without these funds, and this is the exact financial depends that should affect the local authorities to act rationally in spending money, especially when it comes to increasing the number of employees, which is not the case. Also, the report shows that Podgorica, Pljevlja, Ulcinj, Danilovgrad, and Petnica spent in average in 5-year period 16 to even 32% of the total budget expenditures for salaries of the employees and other personal incomes. This is enormous money drain, and it indicates that there are no any serious shift in management optimization. I think that's enough for now.
Thank you very much, Ines. Zarja, what would you say about the impact of the consultations, and how is the contribution from the young people considered?
Thank you. Well, having in mind the fact that youth in Bosnia and Herzegovina is mostly very indifferent to the topic of the public administration, and they view it as this large, complex organism with many levels which they don't necessarily understand in the best possible way. So if we take all of this into consideration, I would say we are, first of all, very, very happy to have had this great group of 12 people who knew exactly what they were going to tackle. Our open call and everything was very clear from the beginning that the end result should be this research conducted. So starting with this group of wonderful young people, we are great to have had them. And like I mentioned in your previous question, I mentioned this practical component that we insisted on. So this is where I find that we made the most impact with the group of our participants. I can just name a little example from the educational training. One of the tasks they were given was to go out in the streets and spend a couple of hours with the citizens. And just engaging in conversation and asking them to fill out the online survey, which we used from the platform moja-uprava.ba, which was developed as a part of the WeBER 2.0 project. And this exercise was great. They had so much fun. They had to provide the evidence. They had to take photos with these mostly young people who were super happy to participate in the exercise. And of course, I believe this increased the number of citizens' participation in the platform Moja Uprava. So this exercise was the preparation for the next practical component, which was the online survey and focus groups research. So what I can say is a little bit about the findings of the online survey. It was done by 202 citizens. The age was spanning from 18 to 65, so very, very diverse age proportion. So in summation, the citizens would very much like to have a digitalized public administration. This would greatly, it would make their lives easier and decrease standing in line while getting the papers they need. Of course, most of their experience with the public administration comes from the service department and at the most local level, such as municipality. Rarely it goes up to cantonal or entity or state level. So mostly the local levels are the place where they have the most experience. So digitalization, they feel that the entire system should be thoroughly audited, and then afterwards they should employ educated people, because this is mostly because they see this system as very politicized and corrupt, which is, I would say, a common denominator here in the Balkans with our public administration. And of course, the citizens emphasize the strengthening of the transparency of the local administration units, and they appeal for the efficiency and effectiveness of their work. The focus groups with the young people, so the participants had a task to go into their communities to find basically the young people that were willing to participate in these focus groups. Most of them were done in person, some of them were done online because this was still a part of COVID time. The focus groups mainly showed the very, very low understanding of youth about what public administration even is, what it encompasses. So once they learned more, because the focus groups also included the educational part. Once they learned more, they were then very eager to share their experiences. They were mostly students, so they all had some experience with the administration. So the groups, the focus groups, like I said, it was the conclusion is the education is key. This is something that we absolutely need to work on, because young people don't even understand the necessity of public administration reform, and they don't even understand what it could bring. So education is definitely key, and this is something that we need to continue working on, I believe, in the entire region. Also on the sustainability of the project, so I would say that in the end, we find that we fulfilled our goal to educate a certain number of young people on these topics. So we find that we achieved it, and also what can ensure the project sustainability and its continuation is these publications or the research analysis, which are available on our website for free download. Hopefully they can be used for further research and continuing on this. So we feel like this was a little baby step we did in this large process that we are currently in and talking about since yesterday morning.
Thank you very much. Zarya, you mentioned everything about the lessons learned and the sustainability of the practice and your achievements throughout the project. Wilfrida, can you please share with us your experience, your lessons learned from the project you implemented?
Yes, actually we learned many lessons. The first one was that the community was really just waiting for someone to just give them an opportunity to get what they want. Actually, they took this opportunity like they were really expecting it. They proved it like an opportunity, like an empowerment, like involvement in the administration, and they are continuing still to go to these public hearings. Before these public hearings were only in paper, and now every month representatives from the community and the citizen committee are present in these meetings, as well as representatives from our organization, and we will continue to participate in these meetings. We as well are receiving reports from the local administration on the situation, how it's progressing once a month. And we have signed an agreement that we will continue to receive these reports even after the project is finalized. We are currently holding meetings even in our organization to see if the process is progressing well. Another lesson we learned is that if we come together and we work hard to create strong civic structures then that have at its best interest the community's interests, then we can make a change, even if it's small steps, but we should do them continuously, so we might see an impact in the future.
Thank you very much. Ferit, you have the same question about the outcome, about the impact of the consultations, lessons learned, and the sustainability.
Okay, the first maybe as an impact, I see that the cooperation between like citizens and bringing on the same table the officials of the municipality, and what is the best, like having from all political parties people in the same table discussing about the needs of the citizens, it's kind of impact. How it will be implemented, their needs, and how they will do that in the practice, that we need to see and monitor them. The other thing that we consider with this project that we managed is the importance that we show to the citizens related to the public hearings, because that's a kind of way how they can keep accountable and transparent the municipalities. But we did something that is like a lesson learned, and we see that you cannot like wait for people like just publishing on the newspaper or on the internet like that you have public hearings, but you should use some other elements to engage citizens. So what we did, we trained like youth members from the municipality, assembly members from the municipality of Mitrovica, like how to use the internet and their official pages to inform citizens related to the happenings or activities that municipality is taken. So each member should, like after each municipal meeting, post what decisions were voted or what kind of projects passed in these meetings. So we are trying to engage these young members of assembly to be in contact with their voters. This is kind of way when they can get feedback much easier, and then they can further push these needs of citizens into the municipality and assembly of municipality. What we did is that with the paper that they published, the recommendations were presented also to the mayor of the municipality, and he welcomed these recommendations, which some of them I will mention, like its digitalization process. We have some kind of services that in most of the municipalities are like getting these certificates, but most of these equipments that provide these services are like they do not function. We think that with digitalization also we will make easier processes and services for the citizens. The other thing is that it's need the main need is like evaluation of the performance of the official servants, because civic servants, because like when we will have this kind of evaluation, maybe also the services will be much better for the citizens. So this is some of the recommendations that we had like in the paper, and there's just an issue but related to the public reform administration is that this could not be could not be initiated by the municipality. It should come from the central level, and in order to, then to go throughout the municipal level. But we have like now like we will sustainability of this is that we are going to monitor the work of the municipality of Mitrovica, but at the same time we will try to implement this kind of information for the citizens throughout the internet and young members from the assembly.
Thank you very much, Ferit. And now, Lila, we are back to you about the outcome and the impact of the consultations, your lessons learned, and sustainability of your project. And generally, the sustainability of citizens' consultations.
In the most of the conclusions, I agreed with Ferit. We have the same conclusion in our project. I think that that open, transparent communication and consultation among citizens and public administration is the key for the success, especially in the reform of public administration at local level. All of us, we should understand that we are citizens in one local community or in one state, and we are all citizens. Who are working in different sectors or parts and public administration. In the most of the cases in rural municipalities, citizens still have some afraid to go to the municipality, to ask for some services, to ask for some information. We should have this fact in our mind that the administration, the public administration, the municipalities are services that are available to us as citizens and that we are paying for them. But also to have in mind the fact that all of us we as citizens are responsible how to contribute to ourselves to the quality of the services and for that open communication and transparency of the municipalities. We have concluded that during these consultative meetings that firstly was hard to organize, but when we start with the first meeting, then after that we have more than 10 meetings, as I said before. Also, we have succeeded to organize 10 open days. We have called open days in these rural municipalities where citizens are coming in the municipalities, talk with the representatives, with mayors, but also the employees in local administration were available for them to support and to help them with getting some e-services, with to involved in some process of digitalization, and also in that part we have engaged in rural youth in these municipalities. So I think that this was also another great success in our project. And I'm very proud of that this project was also replicable in other municipalities that were not involved in the project. So we have 2 other municipalities with which we are communicating now and which are organizing the same way of open consultation with the rural population, and talk about the whole issues that the rural population have in the municipalities and citizens. And some of that initiatives are also put in the in the programs for local economic development for the next year, or maybe in some other programs that are important for the citizens and for the municipality as well. And also we have closed this process of digitalization of the services, but also of the importance to be included and involved in the reform of public administration at local level. But also I should say that our project for our project was very big interest and of the national institutions. We have one public debate on national TV with the Minister of Local Self-Government. When we are talking about these methods that we are using in our project to be in some way unificate and to be uniform for all municipalities in our country. After that public debate, also we have succeeded to put this commitment all municipalities in our country to have a minimum of 10 unified e-services that will be available in all municipalities in our countries, to put this commitment in the national action plan for open government partnership, which for us, for 2021, 2022, 2023, for which for us is a very great success, because the impact of the project we have also on the national level. And also now in the process of creation of a new strategy for reform of public administration in our country, when for the first time the reform of local administration, local public administration will also have some parts, especially in the part of availability of e-services and of services of local administration, for the first time will be put in the national strategy for reform of public administration for next period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lila. Now we will move on with the questions from the audience, if we have questions from the audience. Milena, please.
Well, maybe just a general question to all of the panelists. Milena Lazarevic from CEP. What kind of support would you need in order to improve citizen consultations in the future? And maybe before that, just a short reflection on what was your biggest challenge? Like, what did you feel when you were doing the consultations that maybe you didn't do right, that you didn't manage to do properly? We discussed yesterday, I don't know if all of you were following that panel, but when we discussed the the EU experiences with citizen consultations, we discussed how important ensuring good representation, diversity is, how important it is to include some deliberative elements in the consultations. So maybe reflecting on those elements, at least those of you who were present for the discussion yesterday, maybe you can say a few words about what your greatest challenges were, where you think you could have done better, and what kind of support you would need in the future in order to do a better job in consulting citizens. Thanks.
Should I start again?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Milena, for question, and also thanks CEP for the support to us to conduct this project, because our topic is something relevant currently, but not always supported, especially when it comes to this kind of monitoring of local self-government, not cooperation, but monitoring. The challenge is, based on our experience, that citizens are not interested. I think that you also mentioned that, not just in kind of public debates or public discussions or public hearings, but also I think that they are not aware of importance of their participation and ability to share their needs. And it is a matter of trust, of course. Is there going to be any result? But our task should be also to make it more close to citizens. What is the role of civil society organizations, and what we are actually doing, and why it is important, and how they can really contribute. Support that might be needed is maybe kind of organization of bigger events at the local level, not something like that, but where we will have the bigger visibility of activities in wider public, and some kind of continuity that will make us more present at the local level as actor. But this kind of events that seeks attention could be good, and also cooperation with other partners from the project. Thank you.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, I must be honest. I don't want to communicate with citizens in next period or in next years. because in Montenegro, as I already said, everything is the party. And in that circumstances, I prefer to working some concrete things, for example, analysis and recommendation, not to talk with citizens.
Or to start gardening.
Yes, too much. For me, because you know, maybe one day the balloon pop, and in Montenegro, in that day we will start. We must deal with that bigger problem in public administration, and before that, I'm not quite optimistic to. The things will change. So I want analysis to work analysis. I want to do some recommendation, whatever, and advocate for that through the media, especially through the media, not go and meetings with people and talk with them. Because they... Yeah. The first question is Montenegro. What party says? And the other is what church says. Right?
And would you
I need support from Montenegrin colleague. Maybe my attitude is ridiculous, but...
Thank you, Anna from Institute Alternative, also from Montenegro. I wouldn't say it's ridiculous. It's, of course, legitimate from your side. I would definitely disagree, because maybe it's true what you said, that one part of the citizens is keen to the parties, different political parties, and another party is keen to the church. But that's both also legitimate. So we have to work with citizens as they are, and we have to educate them about public policies instead of politics, daily politics, which mostly take place currently in Montenegro. But I don't think that we as a civil society can allow ourselves to give up on that mission, to educate citizens, to work with them, to fight for consultation processes, ongoing processes, and I think that's our mission in the end.
I never give up, but on the other way, not on this way.
Okay, it's okay. I just have to.
I'm just honest.
Because it's really about Montenegro, so it wouldn't be fair to say that that's an overall opinion of the entire civil society. But of course, it's completely legitimate. We have research, we have advocacy, we have citizens' consultations, so each of us can choose where to work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ines. Zaria, would you like to answer to the Milina's questions?
Yeah, sure. Of course, I completely understand your point of view and coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, but the optimist in me doesn't allow me to only see the dark side. There are many improvements, but there are also so many things we need to work on. And our system it's huge, and we have so many people employed in the system. And of course, it's very much related to their party of choice and whatnot. But like I said, the challenge and what we should work on is to break this illusion of what the system is. People need to learn how it works and how it's supposed to work for them. Basically, they should stop having this illusion that the system exists just to exist in its own form, but that it's there for us and that our tax money pays it and sustains it, basically. So, but that's also the biggest challenge. It's changing the embedded opinion of the citizens. It's not easy, but like the colleague said, there should be more visibility and more education. Just I would say more events, more trainings, more projects such as these, and I can't emphasize the education enough. It's really important. I mean, I'm sure a few years back, I myself didn't know much, and I know more now. So hopefully that answers it.
What about the support?
The support. Well, civil society always should support itself. All of us, we should support each other. Obviously, support should come from higher up, and I believe that like WeBER in itself should continue on. So the support should come from many ends, but hopefully also if we see that we are supported by citizens themselves and from the ground up, that this will boost the process of power, hopefully. So not really sure on the specific agent that can provide support the most.
Thank you, Zarya. Wilfrida?
Yes. Actually, I can say that the community was very cooperative with us. They attended every meeting. We don't have these kind of political issues. Maybe because we are a smaller region, local region, and everyone knows each other, and it's more like we are personal with each other over the party that's in power. The only problem or the most challenging thing for us during this process was the approach of local government, and mainly because of the lack of funds. However, after we had all these sessions and all these reports and documents, and I think in the end they drafted another budget plan, and we were able to allocate other funds. And from 2021 to 2022, the budget was tripled on waste management and reforestation. However, the landfill is being moved to another place, and the current one is being rehabilitated and replaced with many recycle bins in all administrative regions.
Thank you, Wilfrida.
Thank you.
Ferit?
Should I?
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Maybe related to the challenges is that one that also colleagues were mentioning, like convincing people being part of this hearings and consultations process. It's much easier to convince the officials from the municipalities. They are really okay for being there, but citizens, as we mentioned, of lacking that trust to the officials, it's hard to convince them being part. On the other side, what maybe could be done better is like support in expanding this kind of project also in other smaller municipalities, because it would be harder to work in these bigger cities, but in smaller municipalities I think that it's necessary, and it should be done like step by step. We know that what kind of territory we are, like Balkan mentality, and it can be done by the day. It's not like just click and change that mentality. But also maybe what is good to be done is to create a mechanism or body of monitoring these public hearings and raising also visibility of awareness of to the citizens for being part of this process and how important it is about their everyday life.
And how do you assess the citizens' interest in these consultations? Do you think they would like to cooperate?
As I said, it's hard, but you need to do efforts. As I said also before, like it's not just publishing the news on the paper that you have public hearings and waiting for them to come. It should be done more efforts to gain their trust again. That's the hardest part that we are facing. So convincing people, because we have that narrative that if I go there, I cannot change anything. They just like listen for votes or something, but they're not taking into consideration my idea or my thoughts about certain issues. So we should work more on this, like giving opportunity to their ideas and implementing that into the practice.
Thank you very much. Lila?
I think that my colleagues already said everything in my opinions about this question. So I would like to give maybe some summary response. Lack of trust and lack of information is the biggest challenge that we are facing in smaller, especially in rural municipalities. As my colleague said, the citizens don't have information. What are their mechanisms? What are the tools that they can use and to go to the municipality to communicate it, to inform it? In our researches, the meetings of the councils of the municipalities, all of them are public, but only from more than 10,000 citizens, only 5% of the citizens know this fact. And they are not aware about all these mechanisms and tools that they have. So the biggest challenge also in our case was how to convince that these consultation meetings and processes are very important for them, but also for public administration. The employees in the local public administration, in many of the cases, are not aware about, because of these political and some other agendas, are not aware about the real needs of the citizens. And in many of the cases, they are not needed many funds or maybe some other activities to be done something. So I think that is very important. Also, these types of consultation processes to be bigger, to get more of the citizens in connections with local municipalities, to be more informed about all the tools that they have. But also, I think that is very important to have these types of regional exchanging experience. It is very important, but in local level, to see the citizens from these different municipalities in whole the region, how other citizens in their municipalities succeeded to communicate it with local municipalities and to implement it, maybe some of initiatives. So the support, I think that is very important in that part, because these exchanging of experience are very important and gives us also an ideas, but also an motivation what should be our next activities in local level. And also it's very important to have support in the part, because all of the colleagues already mentioned, it's very important these initiatives that are proposed on these types of meetings, maybe to all of us to start to implement it, some of them. In a communication with all local stakeholders, municipalities, we as civil society organizations, citizens, and I think that is the only way when we show to the citizens, but also into the administration, that it's possible to work together and to implement it. Maybe some small initiatives in local municipalities. I think that that is the only part how to get the bigger trust in the institutions, and I think that only in that way these consultative meetings will have more and more people. I think that and also the visibility that my colleague already said is very important. These small local initiatives that will be implemented in local level to be visible to local authorities in other regions, to be visible on national level, and I think that that is the only way how we can improve the trust in the institutions and also the transparency and accountability.
And Lila, do you think that those citizens' consultations were value added to your project concretely?
Yes, these consultations were very important for us, were very valuable, and for the local for the local authorities, but also as I already mentioned, these consultations gives us the ideas, but also make us also very important, not only to local authorities, but also international institutions. And because of that, now we are also recognizable as a local civil society organization that have the capacities also and to bring some issues also on a national level.
Thank you. I don't know whether we have questions, but if we don't have, Vishnya, can you please tell us about the value added of citizens' consultations to your project? Do you think that it gave certain value, additional value to your project?
Yes, yes. That's the main part and main quality, because everything we are doing in the end is about quality of life of people who live in our communities. We are dealing also with the progressive social change, which is gender equality, and it requires communication with different parts. So it was valuable, and we also have supported in a way also Roma women's organization from Novi Sad, and I really believe that we will continue to cooperate on this project or something similar. And we also will try to advocate for some specific services that could be funded. Consultations or field work in any research is the most important part, because this is where you are getting inspiration, or you are getting directions what you should work on. And this is why it's a pity that local self-governments or public administration do not have this type of practice. So, yes.
And I got the impression that people participating in your project were interested to be involved in the consultations. Am I right that they were eager to participate?
Firstly, not that much, because they didn't know what to expect. But after the first communication, and when it started, they were really happy and encouraged to participate. And also it was for them some space to rethinking their position as citizens, because we asked them, for instance, what type of public services are you using? Are you aware of what are the benefits for you from public budget? And this is something that they wasn't thinking before. And for them it was like, oh, really? It could be like changed. And just one additional sentence. For instance, we have the situation that for women in business, we always have the same type of subsidies or supportive measures that are funded and implemented. And it has limited impact. And no one actually is asking women who are using those measures, is it enough, is it good or not? And this is what we tried to do with this project, to inspire public administration to ask final beneficiaries, is it good, is it enough, what we can improve? And I really don't know why they don't want to do that, or why this is not the practice, because this is really easy. So, yes.
Thank you very much. I don't know if someone of you would like to mention something about the value added of citizens' consultations into your project, and about the eagerness of the citizens to participate. Okay, Ferit mentioned that they were a bit skeptical, but for example, Zaria, the young people, would they eager to participate into those consultations, events, debates?
Yeah, so when we were searching for our young participants, we did have significant interest in participation, but I would say a little less than usual. But then the participants were the agents that were required to find other young people to be part of their focus groups. And I would say within the time frame they had, which was a couple of weeks, and they managed to find 70 young people. That's still a significant number of people. It was mostly their friends and relatives and their colleagues from their faculties, but still, regardless of that, the numbers were pretty high. We were happy. And the young people were eager to share their experiences. It was, they felt safe to express their concern and to complain a little bit, but also to praise their like municipalities, small community clerks that they sort of have nice and friendly relationships with, which sort of make the public administration seem like a nice thing and not a bad thing. I would say, yes, these young people were pretty eager, and also the online survey was pretty successful. I would say we did expect a little bit more than 200 responses. But like I said, the participants were also in charge of disseminating as much as possible. But the time frame was pretty tight, so what we could do in that period of time was pretty good, pretty satisfactory.
Thank you very much, Zarya. And thank you all for your participants and valuable responses. We as a WeBER project will continue to push and to remind that only the greater involvement of the citizens leads towards the more open, more transparent and effective process of public administration reform. Thank you very much.
Dear guests, thank you for being with us on this first parallel session today. I would like to announce a 20-minute coffee break. We will continue the discussion in plenum in 20 minutes, so please be back here on time. We will start at 11:20 sharp. Thank you. just a moment.
Welcome back, refreshed and empowered.
Sorry. We have an announcement. Sorry. Sorry for this technical problem. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, thank you for being with us on the second day of our conference. We truly hope you enjoyed the morning parallel sessions and stories from local organizations across the Western Balkans. I would like to announce the panel discussion, Citizen Stories. What are the citizens telling us? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and let us then pick up immediately. In this session, we'd like to hear and discuss what are the citizens telling us, what are their experiences and their expectations. We'll kick off with a short video with some of their impressions, so let's have a look at that first. You'll see it on the big screen behind us. The panelists, you can see it on this small screen in front of us. So let's have a look at the video and we will pick it up.
Navela bih jedan pozitivan primjer koji se desio u Banja Luci u posljednjih godinu dana. To je da su svi troškovi javne administracije prikazani javno na određenim lokacijama širom cijelog grada, te građani na taj način mogu vidjeti uvid u šta se troši njihov novac, što mislim da je veoma bitno da javna administracija koja se puni našim novcem bude transparentna građanima koji je plaćaju.
Ono što je dobar primjer je onaj s druge strane opštine, onaj služi centar. To bi bukvalno trebalo uvesti na sve, na svakom mjestu gdje ljudi čekaju red za bilo šta.
Svim tim javnim upravama gdje sam dolazila, mogu sam da izrazim pozitivan stav, nisam dugo čekala, sve ovo ostalo radim elektronski i mogu sam da ih pohvalim.
Kam apliku direkt dhe më kanë zgjedhur pa problem. Edhe një dëshmi të fundit që mora për gjendjen gjyqësore, vonon sipas procedura ligjore, çdo gjë korrekte.
Unë e sartë kam punë qevia, mi knash, shërbimi kryet nivel dur.
Ajo që duhet për dhënie të shpejtë të shërbimeve është që administratorët mund të aftësohen pak më tepër, të trajnohen.
Ja si ima fere slučaj su grad Skopje, ako ne fate vrski, što ne sakam takvi raboti jaz, predmetut nemaše da bude završen, tako da...
Prvi kontakt sa opštinom nije bio baš prijatan.
Imao sam jedno ne baš prijatno iskustvo u poreskoj upravi. Također je trebalo pribaviti jedan papir u vrlo kratkom roku.
Ви се случаи ако едниот од вработените за одредена услуга е на одмор, а другиот е на боледување, буквално вие се соочувате со ситуација од 20 дена додека не се врати еден од нив да не може да добиете една обична потврда, дозвола и слично.
Kad sam tražila asistenta, u to vreme se zvalo asistent, danas se to zove lična pratnja za dete sa smetnjama u razvoju da ide u prvi razred osnovne škole, oni to potpuno nisu razumeli.
U kancelariji u kojoj sam bio upućen su bile dve osobe. Jedna od njih je i dobronamerna i pokušavala je nekako da mi pomogne, ali nije znala kako. A njegov kolega koji je sedeo preko puta je bio vrlo nezainteresovan.
Ispalo je kao da ja tražim da meni neko gleda dete, a za to opština Požega plaća.
Zakazivanje u Pančevu je najbesmislenija stvar koju sam u životu vidio.
Ona što možem da го izdvojаме може би закажувањето за лична карта или паса, што очигледно станува само проформа, бидејќи закажаниот термин до сега многу ретко се почитува.
Ти би закаже некој 9 сати, ти доđеш u 9 sati zajedno sa 100 ljudi koji zakazaju u 9 sati.
Jam vonuar 4-5 orë, unë nuk kam zgjidhur të respektoj radha dhe të kishte orare të caktuara ose të linim një takim online, mos të pristim 3 orë atje.
Imamo niz drugih problema koje su administrativne prirode, a to jeste nedostupnost i neljubaznost i nekvalitetna usluga javnih administracija, pogotovo kada idete u matične urede, porodne listove i sl.
Jedan od problema sa kojima se vrlo često suočavam, to je neljubaznost službenika.
A što je najgore svega, čak se i ne trude da to na bilo koji način prikriju.
Duke qenë Shqipëri, problemet janë të gjithashme, ndonjëherë dhe nga kultura, por ndonjëherë dhe nga sjellja e administratës, ose atyre që thonë që janë në përshpotele të ndryshme.
Mislim da bi grad mogao više da razmisli, pre svega o edukaciji onih koji rade sa recimo mladima različitog rodnog identiteta, kako bi ih informisao o tome što to podrazumeva.
Da se donesu programi za žene koje su diskriminisane na margini, invalidkinje, romkinje, LGBT populacije.
Koji su izazovi sa kojima se te osobe sreću?
Државните институции треба да бидат многу посензибилизирани во таа насока, односно и државните службеници да бидат едуцирани во поглед со како се постапува со овие лица, но и државните институции исто така треба да возможат пристап до нивните институции, односно до зградите.
Ono što ja mislim da je problem lokalne samouprave, to je neosvešćenost, odnosno nepoznavanje zakona osoba sa invaliditetom i njihovih prava.
Edhe ca grup mosha nuk din ta përdorin këtë aplikacion dhe do të ishte më mirë një çështje pak më fleksible për këto grup mosha, si përjashtim.
Kada, na primjer, ostvaruju korisnici prava iz fonda PIO, a pritom su stare, iznemogle, nepokretne osobe, jako dobro bi bilo da se formiraju neki mobilni timovi, jer mora naravno lično da se potpiše.
Луѓето кои што живеат во руралните средини и одредени ранливи категории лица немаат секогаш лесен, како што се на пример телесните инвалиди, немаат секогаш достапност до одредени услуги заради бројни ограничувачки фактори.
Sluha ima malo, pretpostavljam da ni za ugrožene grupe nema preterano više sluha. Ako je isti model ponašanja prema svima, onda mislim da je njima još teže.
Има одредени институции кои што бележат особен напредок во издавањето на своите услуги, меѓутоа сепак постои далеко огромен простор за подобрување, да речам додека да дојдеме на едно ниво каде што задоволството на граѓаните би било повисоко.
Dođe mi da zidaš direkt na fakultetet, mera je pjesma što došlo. Shoqërisë që e meri tonë për në administratë.
Најбрзо што би можело да даде ефикасност во поглед на тоа дека граѓаните треба да добијат квалитетна услуга, можеби едукацијата на службениците во однос на однесувањето кое што треба да го имаат спрема граѓаните.
Не сум задоволна, оцена 3.
Ocena 3.
3 do 4.
Ниска двојка.
Slabija četvorka.
Оценка 2.
2,5.
2.
3.
2.
So on a scale of 0 to 5, a couple of 2s, a couple of 3s, not a single 4. Is that a surprise to you, Tina?
I think this is something what was expected, more or less. I would have been very surprised if they would have given 5 and,
And 4 or something like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Tina Radmaliv is a professor at Tallinn University of Technology, and our second panelist is Maja Handriska-Trandafilova, director of RESPA. Maja, you're not surprised, presumably. I mean, these are things that you and I as citizens always come across.
Yes, this is the reality that we face on a daily basis.
And how would you assess that reality?
Well, the reality is what we saw, for good or for bad. I mean, this is sort of art imitates life, based on true life stories. So there are apparent hurdles in terms of accessing services that our citizens face, and there is, as we all of us agreed this morning, ample room for advancing the accessibility, the transparency, this hassle-free, proactive, non-selective, transparent delivery of services on the side of the government. So,
ample room for improvement. Is that a euphemism for things are actually pretty bad?
Not really. I mean, I liked yesterday's statement that we also seem to be understating some of the advancements that we have generated as a region in the past period. There are evident improvements, for instance, in the area of service delivery. However, there is, of course, a lot to be desired for in terms of where we want our services to be. So I wouldn't say that there is improvements. There are improvements. I mean, the diagnostics is clear. We have all, went through the progress report. We see OECD's findings. We see WeBER findings. Ultimately, we as citizens are the end users, so we know when our services are seamless or not. We know, when we can exercise our rights or where we cannot. When we see if the laws are sound or strategies are evidence-based or impact assessed or no, so we can feel it. So there have been improvements, and I think that we should acknowledge this, but building on this change gear in terms of reform dynamics, because one has only one lifetime ahead, so change really gear in terms of reform dynamics ahead of us.
Tina, you saw the responses here. If this kind of a survey was done in Estonia, would the answers have been similar, different, very different?
I think in Estonia the answers would have been quite similar. I think it always, I mean, the satisfaction with the services is related where your expectations are, right? Exactly. And that's how you assess the services. So, but what was striking to me in most of these interviews was that the self-perception of the citizen was very much related to sort of customer orientation. Citizens automatically perceived themselves as sort of grateful customers of public services. And in my mind, what is really important, especially in sort of young democracies, is to make a distinction between the role of customers and citizens.
No, that's a very relevant point. How would you define citizen versus customer?
Well, customer is very much interested in the service, right? And this is very much similar, very similar to what we know as sort of private sector customers. But the role of a citizen is much broader. And with the customers, people are like policy takers. They are grateful recipients of public services, sort of this is more like a reactive role. But as a citizen, people are also owners of these services. And that means ownership of the services, that they also design these services. That means that they are not only policy takers, but also policy makers. And that assumes that their role is much more proactive. And I would perhaps have expected more of this kind of proactive role towards the services from the interviews. Like it was touched upon in a few cases where people referred to the access to the public services in the rural areas or for disabled people and so on. But this is, I think, the key for the democratic societies. And when we look at sort of autocratic regimes, that all these autocratic leaders, they are easy speaking about the quality of services, shortening the queues, you know.
As if these are gifts that they give to the population.
Exactly, this is the gift. And I mean, even if you go to the conference in China or wherever, you know, you have lots of talk about, you know, sort of queues and things like that. But what really is important for the citizens in democratic societies is the participation in decision making and participation in the design of these public services.
Almost 20 years after joining the EU, where would you say that the Estonians are? Are they citizens or are they customers?
Good question. In Estonia, I would say that this actually this dynamic or this perception of these roles has really shown some dynamics in the 90s. Actually, also the Estonian government was very much pushing into this customer-related approach.
Because it's easier for the government.
It's easier for the government, and the government is still doing it up to now. And I think that this is exactly where the role of civil society activists is, I mean, here is the full room of civil society activists, and I think it's sort of our mission to keep this distinction between the citizens and customers in mind, and keep the governments under pressure, reminding them about the citizen rights, and also educating the citizens about their rights and their role perception.
Okay, let's do a bit of grading. If we take 0 to be customers and number 10 to be citizens, where are Estonians now on this scale?
I think this is not like one continuum. I think there are two continuums because also this customer approach is very important. But the citizen approach is more important, and they are sort of complementary continuums.
But shouldn't one go down as the other one goes up?
I don't think so. I think they both should go up.
Okay, Maja, you were nodding.
Yes, I was nodding because of the important also role of WeBER in terms of providing this platform and bringing in a vast number of civil society organizations and even citizens directly in this wider public administration reform alliances, in which also RESPA is part of. And I think that this is a massive asset, this CSO, in terms of boosting citizens' engagement. We see a lot of apathy in the region. We saw even in this morning's panel how it's difficult to entice citizens even to enter public hearing, etc., because they do not think that this will result in an impact. So their role in citizens' engagement, in educating, in raising awareness, in this constructive pressure, because the whole point is to drive the pressure towards reform, but also for venturing into the local level, which is very important and very brave on the side of WeBER, because this is the first level of service delivery in this multi-governance system that we operate. And of course, in time, our citizens should also more self-identify with this co-creators role, and not just the end users and sort of service uptaking role, which I hope will also follow in the period to come.
Let's focus now a little bit on the role of the civil society. On the one hand, it's supposed to be a kind of a watchdog of the whole governmental system, etc., etc. On the other hand, it could also play a very important role in educating the citizens to boost their citizenship and not just be customers. Tina, is that a process which you have seen developed well in Estonia?
There is always room for further development, but I think that that very often this, also in the civil society, there is sort of elite of thinkers, of activists, and so on. And I think this elite of civil society activists always wants to target the top government levels, usually in the central government, but also regional, local governments. But I think there is a lot to be done on the sort of lower levels of civil societies, like, and this is something that these elite civil society activists can really sort of promote in the society. Let's say how, well, the usual example that is often given is that School of Democracy are the building societies, right? The big apartment building where people have a say. Or let's say at school, what the parents have to say in the school boards or parent associations and so on. And I think this is exactly where this kind of a new generation of civil society activists actually gets developed.
In Estonia, you've had the experience of, since the breakdown of communism, you've had almost 15 years of taking this avenue and making progress without the EU membership, and you've had almost 2 decades now of EU membership, which certainly has boosted. How important is it? How much are we in the Western Balkans missing out due to the fact that we are still not within the EU, but just on the membership road?
I think in Estonia, during the post-communist transition, the role of the EU was the biggest in the accession period, because the EU provided sort of a compass. It didn't let the sort of government, which was not so, I would say there was little knowledge about different routes that could be taken, that the EU was keeping sort of the compass on the sort of democratic developments. But after the accession, what we also see from basically all the recent or new member states, it's not so new anymore, but after that, I mean, the governments have taken very different routes in a sense. And
am I understanding you properly? Once the membership is there, the government becomes less proactive and less willing to provide?
I think governments is more on its own after the accession. And the government is still active in, let's say, improving policy-making processes and public services, but I would say the impact of the EU is somewhat more limited, I would say.
Majo, how badly do we need EU membership? When talking about EU and the Western Balkans, there's a linguistic difference, which is actually a substantial difference. EU officials tend to talk about the perspectives for membership, and we talk about accession. Is it just a linguistic, or is there a substantial difference there?
Look, I hope that it's not substantial, and I hope that we are talking about the same end destination, which for us is clear, the fully fledged membership, how sorely we need it. Of course that we need it, and we really hope that it is not a never-ending story like the PAR process is, because the PAR process is indeed a never-ending story. I really hope that there will be a predictable, credible accession of the region in our lifetime, because we are also tired of windows of opportunities and decades of waiting. However, you know, irrespective of the fact that we sorely need to of course, accede in the EU, PAR reforms are reforms for the quality of lives of the citizens. So they should occur irrespectively of the, of the accession. Of course, this will aid, assist. There are a number of more instruments at hand, a number of more frameworks at hand once we are in the EU. But we have the standards, we have the principles even for now, and we as citizens know when things are right or not wrong. You know, you were mentioning this morning how you have to, lean down. You know when someone treats you with dignity or not, when the service is seamless or not, when the services have already pre-exchanged interoperable documents or not, when the strategies are delivering or not. So even though it's a bit presumptuous to interpret what is the Vox Populi, I think that, citizens need public administration with a human face. We understand the context, we understand that this is a difficult uphill road ahead, but we simply need for the state to deliver its services, to deliver growth-enhancing policies, this enabling environment in order for it to be able to respond to the societal challenges that we face. I mean, we live in a multi-crisis world. So we need this, non-selective, transparent, anticipatory, predictive services, and it's nothing out of the ordinary. So we are not engaged in whims, in capricious demands. So I think that, what we demand from the PAR process as citizens is pretty clear.
Maybe you might just want to explain the acronym PAR to those who are not familiar.
Public administration reform processes. So I think that, this should be done for here and now, irrespectively how the process of the accession continues, which I hope will, of course, especially given the new geopolitical momentum, and especially since we are in the process for even decades. I mean, let's not count the Thessaloniki pledge, etc. So irrespectively of this, even though I hope there will be fast tracking on that process, we need to do it for now. For for not adding an extra layer of complexity in an already complex and difficult lives and worlds that we are living on a daily basis.
Okay, just a remark for those who are following the discussion online. You can use the chat function in Zoom if you have a question for our panelists. Tina, when we were exchanging emails preparing for this session, you said something very interesting, that at yesterday's session, the term citizen consultation was mentioned many times. And you wanted to explain why is consulting a very modest form of participation. I find that very intriguing. Would you care to explain?
Yes, absolutely. Also, that was my impression of today's session in the morning, that very many people use the term citizen consultations. And And I think terminology is very important in public administration reform, and we should be careful what kind of words we actually use, because when I would advise everybody to visit the website of the International Association for Public Participation. And in this website, they also give some sort of background materials, access to the background materials. And this is very widely used framework of public participation, which distinguishes between 5 different levels of citizen participation in policymaking. And the 5 levels are informing citizens, second, consulting with citizens, the third is involving citizens, the fourth, collaboration with citizens, and 5, empowerment of citizens. And this basically entails that consulting citizens is, together with informing citizens, is a very sort of low level of citizen involvement. This basically means hierarchical relationship between the state and the citizens, sort of superficial approach from the state. Consulting with citizens means that the government listens to the citizens and acknowledges their concerns, but in the end does what it wants. And this is not exactly what we as a civil society people, well, this is not our aim, right?
This is not what we want to accept.
So our aim is to get citizens involved, reach the collaboration between the government and citizens, and ultimately get to the empowerment of citizens. So basically these informing and consulting processes, these mean that there is only very minimal shared decision-making authority between the state and the citizens. And basically this means that citizens, this may lead to the sort of participation fatigue that we were also discussing earlier today, that basically citizens get invited to public hearings, to the meetings, to surveys, and so on. First, you are enthusiastic, you do that, but then once you see that there is no impact whatsoever, then you give up, and you don't want it. It leads sort of a vicious circle, right? And so basically, I think also in the way how we refer to citizen engagement or citizen participation, I think we should always refer to citizen collaboration between government and citizens, citizen empowerment, involvement of citizens, but not so much to the consulting processes, which is more passive way of government approach.
However, there is no state in the world which is willing to sort of simply give up the power which it has. We have to wrestle it away. Mm-hmm. And is that the job that the civil society has now at hand, together with the citizens?
Yeah. This is exactly so, because in the end, the citizen participation has to do with the power relations with the government. And the lower levels of participation, such as informing and consulting with citizens, do not affect the existing power relations. The power stays with the government, decision-making power. But the aim is to have sort of shared decision-making power, and that's why it's very difficult to reach these higher levels of participation, because that means that the government should give up some of its existing power.
And how do we get the government to do that? To give up? There's no government in the world which gives up power which it has. I mean, we need a microphone for the audience, so if you'd care to repeat this. Milena, please.
No, I just wanted to say that, you know, in our region, in our semi-authoritarian hybrid regimes, we're struggling to even be consulted. And then, you know, it is very difficult. I mean, we know the semantic and the substantive differences between the different levels of citizen engagement and empowerment. But the problem is that we cannot get, and I mean, we are struggling to even get the governments to consult us, let alone really empower us and share the role of policy, of policy creation. So how do we apply this level, these high levels of participation, of public participation in our local contexts, which are so difficult?
Milena Lazarevic anticipated my next question to you. The one similarity, for example, between Estonia and the West Balkan states is we're all post-communist societies. In the era of communism, the hierarchy was extremely sort of top-down and very, very strong. How did you achieve to sort of reach this level of involvement, participation, empowerment?
Well,
what lies in front of us?
I agree also what you, Milena, said, that actually it's not so easy to jump immediately to the citizen empowerment. But for example, even if you use some performance budgeting, although the problem with performance budgeting is that even when citizens can decide about some parts of the budget, this is usually very marginal that citizens can think of. But this is empowerment, where actually citizens make decisions, even about small things, where to build a bus station or something like that. I mean, the small bus stop. So basically, I think it's not so that in all of the decision-making processes, the level is very low. There can be some smaller decisions where the stakes are not so high, where citizens can have more to say. And in the processes or in the which are not so sensitive for politicians. I mean, the politicians will never give up the power over very sensitive issues. But there are less sensitive issues where it is possible to gradually perhaps sort of raise the standards of citizen participation. In Estonia, for us, the big sort of key for the development in state citizen relations has been digitalization, because for the government, digitalization is a very big aim, and this is not questioned. So it has worked very well in the provision of e-services, and that's how the civil society activists decided that, well, let's use this success in the e-services and try to transfer it to the e-participation. And that maybe that's the way how the government would accept more of this kind of citizen involvement. But it hasn't really worked out so well. I mean, it has not been possible to sort of transform this success in e-services to the e-participation because, again, the participation as such challenges the power distribution in society. And it's really sort of step-by-step development.
Majo, and this also ties up with a question we have from an online participant, Stanka Damjanovic. To what extent do we have the capacities to absorb and implement the EU standards or the standards that Tina is talking about now to raise from the level of sort of being an irrelevant part of the process to being an active participant and to own the process?
I mean, I believe that we have the capacity, and we are already...
RESPA is in the process of building up that capacity.
We are building the capacity focused mostly on the public administrations, and if you allow me, I also want to bring in a bit their perspective. I sort of feel compelled because we are working with the public administration, because they also face their struggles and constraints in their operations, etc. So, in the public administrations as well, they need continuous capacity building, learning. They also would benefit from a bit of a failure culture, experimentation culture, a bit collaborative culture. They also, want to see skills-based recruitments, promotion. They also want to see fair competitive salaries. They don't want to see, political, appointees parachuted from nowhere or mushroomed institutions with blurry, lines in terms of delegation. They also don't want to see maybe micromanagement, silo approach, etc. So I just wanted to bring in this perspective as well, because hardworking civil servants and hardworking CSOs and citizens, they make the Reform Alliance. And of course, our ambition should be always for the higher level of engagement and of co-creation. But I believe that, also once public administration, policymakers, etc., are a bit also educated, you showcase to them concrete examples where citizens' contribution, enriched a process, improved an outcome. If you find certain champions that are willing to do this, etc. So I think that you slowly build the momentum there. So I just wanted to bring in, and I think that there is a capacity. We are already as a region benchmark against the EU principles on good governance and democratic and functioning institutions. And even though the situation is not ideal, there is, from an observation period to another, an improvement.
Aren't you being a little bit too optimistic?
I mean, do we have another choice? We are doing it to improve, as I said, our lives and livelihoods in this region. So I think that with good commitment from all sides, with perseverance, etc. And making. This morning we heard a triangle. Citizens, local, CSO.
Local authorities, civil society.
So if we work in such wider reform alliances, I think that, we will progress more than we are doing it now. So I choose to be optimistic, otherwise, it will be very frustrating to work, the job that I'm doing, that is boosting regional cooperation in the function of public administration reform.
That's okay. I was just playing the devil's advocate. Yes. I'm a pathological optimist, actually. Tina, you have a plane to catch very shortly. Just before you leave, what would you take out of your briefcase and pass on to us as something that is really important, something that we need to pay extra attention in reforming the public administration?
Wow.
Yeah, okay, it's a tall order, admit. It's a tall order.
Yes.
Okay, look,
if I only knew the answers, but personally, I think that in the long run, what really pays off is the civic education. It's basically it's possible to achieve some victories if you have small group of dedicated and competent people, but I think in the long run, what I have done lots of research in all of the post-communist countries, and even if we look what's happening right now, let's say in Hungary, also to some extent in Poland, what we see that these kind of democratic values are not so ingrained in the citizenship. And it really makes sense to invest into civic education, both at schools, also in the universities, in the families, in the everyday decision-making. I think this is very, very important.
Civic education, that we're talking about a process which takes basically one generation to actually...
True, if not more.
If not more.
Yes.
So are the results showing now in Estonia?
Unfortunately not, because our government has made this mistake that even very democratically minded parties have not invested in this civic education at schools. Students learn constitution, have some very sort of formal discussions, do their exams, but they don't really perceive deep in the heart the democratic values. And that also shows that there is a rise of the populist parties and so on. So it's nothing critical yet, but I think this is sort of a job that has not been done during the past decades.
Majo, you're too young to remember, but when I was about this big, there was a TV series which was extremely popular in the then Yugoslavia. It was called Građanin Pokorni, the obedient citizen. How do we move from that phase, the obedient citizen, to the participatory citizen that we've been talking about and that we would like to see tomorrow? 4 more minutes, Tina, and then we'll let you go. We know your plane is...
Oh, it's such a complex question. You know, through this empowerment agenda, so slowly, gradually, through, you know, also pushing public administrations to be more proactive. So not this ticking the box exercise, not just, you know, publishing on the web that there is a public consultation or a law is in, I don't know, an NR or some, you know, online, let's say, consultation platform, etc. So, you know, by improvements from all sides, and then also empowering them to find the voice within, because they should also have this co-creation role, and they are not just the passive recipient of the services.
Same question for both of you. When was the last time you hit a brick wall trying to deal with public administration and simply failed miserably, not through your lack of trying? Mayo?
Oh, I mean, you
this
know,
morning,
not this morning, but you know, as I say, no, we are deep. I mean, irrespective of the different hats that we have, different functions, we are all, you know, citizens in certain contexts. So, you know, in the past couple of years, I lived in 3 of the region's countries. So, you know, I've struggled. I mean, on one hand, I have been able to, you know, I don't know, take an ID in a day or a passport. Then I have had a situation which I was unable to register my car in 1 month. And this was beyond any comprehension. So I was unable to drive my car for a month because this is how it lasted. So, you know, we hit these walls on an everyday basis. So it is, as I said, the task of all of us, you know, in our own remits of intervention in whatever we're doing, for instance, on the side of RESPA, trying to build the capacities of the civil servants through regional knowledge sharing, through, you know, policy recommendations, through mobility exchanges, through capacity building. So everyone, CSOs, through their, I don't know, maybe pressure momentum, through their education, etc. So from all of the angles to try to ameliorate the situation, because I'm sure all of us, you know, have a not so happy story to share in terms of, you know, and we are talking immediately at the level of services, but what about the level of our strategies, our national development plans, you know, our laws, you know, have they been sound prepared, or they have been, you know, fast-tracked through some, you know, procedure. So we are talking at every level of policy making and policy coordination. So I'm stopping here.
Tina, how familiar are you with the brick wall? I mean, there are brick walls here in this building.
Yes, of course I am familiar with it. Basically, my personal relations to the government are twofold. One is that I often get invited as an expert to different discussions over policy. I would say more recently these have been quite positive experiences where at least I have been able to a bit change the policy agenda or a bit change some decisions, but the other side is that where I have acted as an activist myself, and more recently I had a negative experience when I was leading a sort of, it was not a formal project, but where we basically approached my local government and with some other about 100 people, and we wanted to change how the funding is allocated to the children's sports clubs. That was just related to my own kids, and of course the original idea is that I wanted their sports club to get more funding. So, and usually I choose my fights very carefully because I have very limited time. And once a year I do these kind of activist things. And there, unfortunately, we failed, and the existing system stayed in place. But we were able to really challenge the entire discussion about the financing of the sports clubs.
But failure is good as well, because it tells us what does not work. Yep. Next time we try differently. Thank you very much. Maja Handžiska-Trendafilova and Tina Radma-Liv. I hope I've not mispronounced your name too much.
It's okay.
Please stay where you are. A round of applause for our panelists, please. And as I said, we don't have a coffee break or anything else, so I'm asking the new panelists to come up here, and we will kick off actually with a presentation. So if we can have Sava Mitrovic and Dragana Jacimovic coming up for the presentation. Hello there. Please have a seat. And also, if I can ask Florian Hauser and Simonida Kaczarska to join us as well. I'm giving her my seat. I like to sit on the side. This way I can look.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Where would you like? I'm fine. No, you go there. That's fine. Thank you.
Right, so, Sava, you're going to kick off first? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm waiting for... Hello, everyone. My name is Sava Mitrovic. I'm a researcher in European Policy Center, and I'm glad I have this opportunity to, together with my colleague Dragana from Institute Alternative from Montenegro, to present you results of our citizen campaign, regional citizen campaign. So let's say a few words about this campaign. So basically through Mind Your Reform, regional online citizen campaign and platform, WeBER is collecting and sharing citizens' views on public administration reform, their experiences with public administration, and thus contributing to the creation of more citizen-oriented public administration. So far, 6,000 of experiences have been collected across the region, and the WeBER team analyzed the first 4,000 of experiences and produced the first out of 2 rounds of country-level analysis. So let me start with Serbia. In Serbia, total number of collected experiences was near 1,000, and slight majority of them were negative. These 4 groups of public services are those where the largest number of experiences were collected, and as you can see, citizens express pretty negative attitudes towards different services related to real estates, like sale or registration of real estates. So that could be a message for cadastre in Serbia. On the other hand, people in situation of looking for the new job or something like that related with job research, they had the majority of them express good feelings. So we could say that National Employment Service is let's say well assessed by citizens. When we talk about qualitative findings in Serbia, we could say that a smaller number of citizens positively assess the efficiency of state administration bodies. Citizens believe that information they need to receive some service or to exercise their right are mostly insufficiently clear and inaccessible. On the other hand, the majority of citizens expressed good feelings and a high level of satisfaction with the e-governmental portal. They indicated this portal enables faster and easier access to public services. The positive experiences relate primarily to the reduction of the time it takes to receive a services, as well as elimination of unnecessary waiting in the lines. They are very satisfied with the possibility to make an appointment online, or although to pay some fees online, etc. Let's move to Albania. Albania is the only country in the Western Balkan where most of surveyed citizens express positive experiences. three categories of services that we could mention here is the public transportation services, where the vast majority had bad feelings. On the other hand, there's a vast majority of citizens that had good experience with local governmental services. In Albania, generally speaking, the citizens are very satisfied with the conduct of civil servants, stating that civil servants are polite and they have patience for their questions, etc. Although citizens are also generally satisfied with the electronic services, they indicated that number of simple services that also could be offered through electronic services, and they're not currently. In North Macedonia, vast majority of citizens express negative experiences. These are four types of services where the largest number of experiences were collected. That is health services, social welfare services, employment services, and also services related to personal documents, issuing of these documents. In North Macedonia, citizens have said that they have to wait a long time to obtain basic documents, and also some citizens had bad experience with the public servants. They said that public servants often deny access to certain services without giving an adequate explanation for that. Now I yield the floor to my colleague Dragana.
Hello everyone, thanks to colleagues for introducing me. I will start with Bosnia. Just thank you, Sava. As you can see, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we collected the greatest number of experience. You can see the data here in the presentation, and I think that all of you know how the system of Bosnia is complicated, and if we have all the data segregated at all three levels, and if I try to explain you all the data, we will have to stay here for at least 2 days more, so I will skip that part, and I will present you only the numbers on the state levels. On the state level, when it comes to Bosnia, we can see that we actually had 66% of negative experiences collected by the citizens, and 52% of experience were actually collected from the women. This is something that is maybe interesting because in other countries we had that experience were mostly gathered from the men. When it comes to the positive or negative experience, we really need to share one example, and that is that in District Brčko, 99% of collected experiences were negative, and that this is something that is really I don't know, really important to be resolved as soon unbelievable. But also we have two completely opposite examples in two different cantons. I need to read the names, sorry, for my colleagues from Bosnia. Actually, because in Canton Posavинski, 100% of experience were positive, and those were related to issuing personal documents. And on the other side, in Canton Hercegovačko-Neretvanski, we had 98% of negative experiences related to the same type of services, which is issuing personal documents. When it comes to the positive examples, those are mostly related to procedures such as wedding procedures and so on. But negative ones, which is also alarming, is that in the places where there is no info table that persons with disabilities and pregnant women should go first and take the service, people would not leave them to be first, and then people from the administration, employees on the country, ask for you to loudly say what type of disability do you have. So if you want to go first and you're people with disability, you need to loudly say what kind of disability you have, which is really, really problematic. I will go on Kosovo. contrary to the Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo is the country where we actually received the smallest number of the experiences. You can see that we had only 36 persons participated from 11 municipalities. What is also interesting is that Kosovo is the only country where the citizens who participated didn't actually specify whether their experience was positive or negative. They just shared their experience, which is 20 of them. Also, it's important that most experiences are gathered from the age group from 25 to 34, which is not the situation in all other countries. As you can see, Kosovo is outstanding a bit with those numbers. But when it comes to the qualitative analysis, researchers from Kosovo actually tried to define some patterns, and that is that main negative experiences were actually related to the lack of professionalism, which is also the situation in all other countries. But when we say lack of professionalism, I mean that employees do not want to share enough information with them, they do not want to explain complicated procedures, and they are very rude. This is the common conclusion for all the countries, and I will repeat that once more when presenting Montenegro. We also had one experience. Sorry, I forgot on presentation. We also had one experience where the case of discrimination was actually reported through this gathering process of experience, and this was related when citizen identifying himself as a minority group actually requested assistance from natural disaster compensation, and he actually claimed that there was a case of discrimination, and he reported that to us. So I forgot to mention that one of the qualitative finding is actually that in Kosovo, the main problem when it comes to the public administration is outdated technology and lack of digitalization, which means that citizens need to go directly to institution and get the most of the services that they actually need. Last but not the least is actually Montenegro, where we actually collected the 4,074 experiences from the citizens. I want to clarify that in Montenegro we had no luck with getting experiences online, so we decided to go directly in front of the institutions, and when someone finished with its service, we directly collect the experience from them. And this was very interesting because we could see their facial expressions after taking any kind of service in front of the institution. As you can see, we actually had 58.6, almost 60% of negative experiences, and 1/2 of the collected experiences actually refer to services provided by Health Insurance Fund of Montenegro and tax administration as well. Also to mention that most experiences are actually gathered from the age group 35 to 44. When it comes to the qualitative findings, I need to say that the only institution for which we actually received the more positive than negative experiences is actually those services related to health, but only those provided by Health Insurance Fund of Montenegro. Some general conclusion is that actually public administration is inefficient. We have slow, complicated procedure, which is reflected in long quiz. People have to go twice or 3 times to get some service, and there is still one paper missing issue in our country. We had a lot of examples when people shared with us that, for example, if first time they couldn't get the service that they wanted, and the second time when they went to institution, they were told, but you need this one paper, for which when first time they were there, no one told them they actually have to bring. Also, you can see from the presentation, lack of professionalism is also a problem in Montenegro, and I will just quote one experience. They are rude. They act as if everyone who comes here knows everything about their procedures, and I'm completely out of it. this is something, this is experience that actually summarize how the people who directly, actually how the employees who directly communicate with our citizens do not recognize that the most important, on the previous panel we heard that the most important is actually how do we communicate things. And here the problem in our country definitely is that we do not communicate with our citizens directly on the adequate way. And the last thing that I want to mention regarding Montenegro is that we had during COVID positive examples where some services could partially be completed via email. For example, we could send some kind of request, etc. But when the COVID crisis was ended, actually those services get back to institutions and you could not send any kind of request or via email, so you had to go directly to the institution. I have a lot of examples, but maybe to leave that for them, if that is time, that's enough for me for now.
Thank you very much, Dragana. And a reminder to those who are following us online, you can ask your questions or make comments using the chat function in Zoom, and they'll be passed on to us. Right, so Simonida Kaczarska, Director of the European Policy Institute in Skopje. First of all, any surprises here, or is this what you were expecting to see?
Not so much. I think that this kind of reflects very well on the video we saw before. And as I'm a researcher, this is a snapshot. I mean, it's also, we have to keep that in mind. This is a very random sample. We are talking about different samples in different countries, but still the indications of 100 positives and 99 negatives on the same service relating to the same issue, such as the position of the administration, might be very indicative.
Sounds like
just
a
to say.
methodological
yes,
problem,
there's no, yeah. I think there we can be sound that there is an issue. I think that these forms of consultations, of feedback and so on, show us the need to think in a more structured way about how do we obtain feedback from the citizens, because there evidently is a need for such exercises, which were piloted in many of the countries in different forms. But I think for us, as a, let's say, because I'm one of the partner organizations of the project, we need to think of ways of how we can make this, improve this in our work down the road in a structured manner. And just two more sentences, because I spent the last 2 days in Skopje, I could not join you, with 2 local municipalities, actually, in terms of the provision of social protection services and introducing some structured ways of beneficiaries for their assessment. And I can share some of the insight later from this, but I think I saw a lot of these, I saw a display of these quotations that Dragana shared with us in terms of you need to know the procedures, and also last, the attitude that we have possibly inherited, possibly developed in these 30 years, that the administration, that the citizen is a consumer, but there is this very much hierarchical, going back to your the previous panel, there is a very much hierarchical position of the administration being on top of things, and the citizen as a pure, possibly consumer, sometimes with all of the inequalities that come with them, but creating a very unpleasant environment for a person that would need to approach the public administration for a variety of services, which probably we should not name services, but probably we should go back to some of the essential things that were mentioned here, because this is social protection, this is education, and using this, I was thinking also a lot about terminology, because sometimes the words that we use as think tankers, in terms of broad concepts,
either don't come across or have a different meaning.
Yeah.
Why your country came worst? What happened?
Yes.
Were your citizens grumpy that morning?
And we were collecting
yourself.
Yes, it came worst. I think that it also reflects the general mood in the country as to the direction that it is headed. There's a general dissatisfaction also with a lot of the processes. The survey was completed, I think, probably before last year, until mid last year or September. There was a lot of, we were also in a lot of political crisis, but I think it shows us also to a direction that we need to head in terms of how do we actually improve the connection and how do we respond to this same feedback. Because also in some of the work that we see, I think that this is also very illustrative all across the countries, that of the sentence that the European Commission usually would put forward, that the legislation is in place, but the implementation is failing. Because in a lot of these issues, there's no issue of a law. It's very much a behavior in our context. But it's also the behavior of the person that is there and their training of the person that receives the first contact with the citizen.
I think you and I, Simonida, agree that in the Western Balkans, the laws might be a problem, but an even greater problem is the implementation of the laws, whether they're good or bad. Florian, can I come to you? Looking at the complaints that you've seen here from this study, you're a German citizen, but you live in Brussels. You work for the engineer. How would you, if you were answering these questions and you were grading all of this in either Belgium or Germany, what would the grades be? Would they be significantly better than the ones we collected here?
Well,
or the same?
First of all, I think the grades, there's a lot of variety in what you showed. And I will answer your question in a minute, but I wanted to say something before. I think it was very good that you go beyond administrative services in your assessment, because I know WeBER works a lot with the principles of public administration. When we talk about services, it's basically administrative services. But what concerns citizens is much wider. So you look, and we always say, we use a word that I don't like, we talk about mainstreaming public administration. It means that administration is in every sector, in social, education, health. But I think when you break down your analysis, I'm pointing to a black screen.
Yeah, that's where the screen was that we were looking at.
And if you break down the analysis, you have, you first of all, administrative services where we said, well, you're a customer. There's probably a lot of stuff that's quite easy to fix. So you have rude people, okay. I mean, you can take them to the countryside, have a nice seminar on being more polite. But if you have things like health or social support, and you don't get your social support, and you get a very bad, no good healthcare, you die or starve or freeze to death. So that's and that's probably also not so easy to fix. So I think we need to make this distinction. But there's a lot I have to share with you. But quite frankly, in Germany, it would probably be the same or worse in parts. I think it's quite bad and not
because the services are the same, or because the citizens have higher expectations.
I think the German administration was very good in a stable world of the 1960s to 90s. But first of all, we have very different expectations. We have a different and different technology, and the Germans have not come up with and have not adapted because they were so good in the old world. But in the new world, they're really struggling. I want to give you an example. A friend of mine has a severely disabled child, daughter, and she has a right to disability benefit. And the condition of her daughter will not change. She has a genetic disease. But every year, she has to apply for the same benefit. And it's really humiliating. You have to explain what her problem is and has it, whatever. So what you could do, you could just say, well, if you want to have a form of control, you just don't continue the service. You want to check every year. You can just ask the question, has the situation changed? And you say no.
One question, one answer.
And that's it. So it's and I think that's very important also to build trust. What you saw in the analysis, there's a lot of sort of humiliating situations. They treat you bad, and I think it's a very important first step that you're open and friendly and said, we are providing a service. We are here to help you. We might have a problem. You might have a document missing, but let's try and solve it together. In Belgium, it's much better.
Say, is there a difference?
Belgium is famous for terrible service. But for example, I have to do my taxes every year. And in my situation, because I'm a boring civil servant, nothing changes. So they do ask me, has something changed? I go, no, and it's finished. It's done. And what they also did, because on the question of customer and citizen, do you just receive a service, or do you live in a policy context where you suffer? The Belgians were quite proactive they have an initiative, it has the nice name Kafka. Do you know that? There's a nice website, it actually works, kafka.be, and there you can report if an existing law is basically totally absurd. But this can apply, to what you're allowed to do in your garden, or if you're a small family business, it can really make your life very complicated. And then you can report that, and they have already, I think, repealed or changed 130 laws because of that. That's more maybe on the citizen level.
So if you've got a Kafkaesque experience, go to Kafka. Interestingly, I wouldn't have expected from the bureaucracy to come up with such an inventive name for the website.
Yes, and it's quite funny. And I think it's the second best because you respond to a complaint. I think the Danish are even better. They have something called Burden Hunter. They actually go out proactively and they test on the ground how people are burdened by crazy legislation. So I think that's also interesting.
Simonida, when you hear the complaints of this kind, I mean, do you get depressed by comparing them to the complaints that we have in the Western Balkans? Or does it inspire you actually to work more, harder, be more successful?
Well, actually, the German model reminds us very well of probably of what we have. But we are also very, I think that goes back to the whole rule of laws and the legality principle that we see all over the administration that makes them at times very difficult in adapting to new circumstances, in being more creative, sometimes just as you say in terms of the change, has something changed or no. And we have just, funnily but anecdotally, we have the same rule for disability allowances in the country, and that you have to go back, you have to go for 60 years or 70 years, you have to go to through the same humiliating process. I think it depresses us for sure, but I hear I'm a colleague with Maya, so we have to be in some way optimistic and look at some of the role models as to what can be done better or leave.
And what would you say are the priorities on the basis of the study that we saw? Because we saw just a part of the results. We'll come back to you, by the way, Dragana and Sava, in a moment. What would you say are the primary tasks ahead of you as civil society, as members of the WeBER project?
If we look at this, now I'm probably overstepping my boundaries beyond Milana at this point, but if we look at what is the way that we collected this evidence here, I think that we really need to think of structured ways of how do we streamline this citizen feedback into the policy cycle, because that's what we are good at. That's what we, from our position of partners in the project, I think we have a much more privileged, in a sense, access to decision and policymakers to think of ways in how this can be operationalized. And the other thing that I've always been a fan of, and I think this was mentioned here by Tina, is to identify the good cases. Really, we really need to work with the champions, and this is something that has been repeated for some time. Maybe go to the district in, was it in Montenegro or in Bosnia, that had the 100% positive story, and to look at what actually is happening there. This is something that we've engaged a lot with, because the negative, we will also look at the negative cases, but we need to start to see in our context that there are the exceptions, because they work under the same law. We've had such examples in North Macedonia with institutions that have traditionally performed well, and we really examine some of these cases. And the second point is, how do we think of more structured ways to get this randomized feedback, but in the specific policies, and also possibly to engage, if we're talking local municipalities, in development of joint action plans, joint scorecards, which can be measured over time to actually contribute and to see that things have changed. These are new methods that we can pilot and think of, and I think we would be good position to actually implement them.
Florian, the European Commission, especially DG NEAR, where you work, is very involved and is trying to boost the performance of the public sector in responding to the needs of the citizens. How satisfied are you with the progress that has been made over the last 3 years or 5 years or 10 years?
I think it's an ongoing challenge, and you see, you see some areas of improvement. You see, especially also during COVID and the provision of digital services, that there has been quite tremendous improvement. And
tremendous?
Yes, and I think we have some concrete examples, and we see what Albania did, also what Serbia did. It's probably better than several countries inside the EU. I think the real problem is sort of the wicked systemic problems that we listened to also in the previous panel. When I think when you have administration that wants to be there for the citizens, and it doesn't have the capacity, you can actually do something. But when you have this high level of politicization, when it's basically a job creation machine for friends, then you hire people, so you can give, so they get some money, but they're also not motivated to do any positive work. We talked in the previous panel about the inflated civil administration. And I think in that sense, if you don't have the right spirit and the right values, so when Maciej yesterday spoke about values, if you don't agree on the values, you will not improve. And I think that's very difficult to change.
What about, are there any good practices that you would care to recommend? Not necessarily give all the examples now, but maybe just single something out that we could build, that we can pick up and build on.
Yeah, I want to give you, not an EU, I want to give you a local example, but also I want to challenge.
That's fine as well.
I want to challenge something which, and I use my space now. I think citizens is very important, but citizens can be bastards as well. Yeah, so,
of course.
I live in a part of Brussels, yeah, in Uccle. It's the wealthier part, I admit. But and the government is doing everything right. They now engage citizens really more than consultation. They're really co-creating, for example, a new transport plan. Yeah. And you have to improve the transport system for society. And then the citizens come, and the people that show up is all the wealthy pensioners that come from a 1960s car culture, and they don't want public transport. They hate cycle paths. They hate people with families and prams. They just want to drive big Mercedes, and they mess everything up, and they block innovation. In Germany, we the term the first-time voters. They're very important. Young people. They vote. In Germany, the majority of people, and in Belgium, are last-time voters. They're going to die soon. They vote one more time. They don't want to change anything. So I think, and then you have, if you're a government and public administration is executing for the government, you have to also see how do I achieve a balance for society, because citizens are all kinds. We're very pluralistic, and we don't all share the same values, And we have to be careful, because we sit here, I think we probably share the same values, but we're also a bubble. And we have to also learn to talk to people that have different opinions. And you have to find this balance. Otherwise, we have more and more a fragmented society, and we have to bring people together. Did that answer your question? No.
Yes, just wait for the microphone, please.
I just wanted to say that this brings us back, this very important point that Florian made, brings us back to what came out as one of the most important takeaways, at least for me, from the spotlight discussion yesterday, that it is extremely important to ensure representation and to include deliberation also, because these old people would not have the same kind of impact on the policies if those consultations included also young people, tech-savvy people, exactly. First-time voters, and if actually they were put in a situation where they have to deliberate and discuss and create some sort of a joint knowledge or joint proposal. Yeah. So this is why, there are consultations, and this is why it is extremely important to do consultations right.
Right. May I, because you asked about the good practice, I think one example that I had, I worked in the pre-accession phase of Croatia. I was coordinating the post-war reconstruction. So there was a lot of work to be done on bringing people back together after the conflict. And there was an organization that you might or might not know. It was called GONG, and GONG HR. And they, because you spoke before about citizen education, I think there's really the role of civil society to educate citizens. So they were just also explaining to people, when you vote, you know, and you vote not just for the label or for some populism, but this is what you're really going to get, you know. And they were educating people, and they were also creating partnerships with the local level. I think we talk a little bit about the local level now. And they did this citizen hours, but because they had prepped both the administration and the local government, and they have prepped the people, they could find the trust to meet each other. And they had rules about, you know, how you communicate. And I think that worked very well. And some of these civil society leaders, then they actually formed sort of a political party. And one good friend of mine, she's now an MP. And from her party is also now the mayor of Zagreb. And that's probably the best mayor around, you know. And so I think there's a lot of hope in that as well.
Simonida, I must say I never thought of, you mentioned last-time voters, and presumably if somebody told me I was a last-time voter, I would not be wanting to participate in any discussion of any kind. But Simonida, it is very difficult to get the first-time voters to get really involved. They tend to be sort of a little bit on the lazy side, or am I wrong?
Well, I mean, this is a problem everywhere, probably more in our context and our region because of the broader disillusionment and the broader context
the young population.
in the context in which they have grown up. Because to be fair, they have grown up in rather unpleasant circumstances. They have grown up with a decay of within a decay of values, within an environment that does not support disappearance of values. Yes, I was being kinder probably with that use of the word decay. But they would rather, we know that their option is rather to leave. Most of them decline or resist conforming to what you said, the politicization of entire societies through the domination of political parties. I think this is a problem that is broadly recognized by many stakeholders. But I don't think we have found a proper way in engaging beyond the label. This is my personal view, also my personal experience, beyond the label of youth, because I know that there's a lot of focus on how do we engage with the young population. But I think that what we've worked also in my organization a lot with this, but I think it was much more valuable to actually identify the interests of the specific young people and to work with them in developing those interests rather than complementary with the broader discussions of youth conferences, because this is what we are seeing now unfold in the region, mushrooming of youth events, but we are trying to very much link them with the discussions at policy level. I was just last week in Berlin, where I was participating as part of the civil society forum of the Berlin process. And in parallel, we also had the youth forum. And to be fair, their demands were much more sounder than ours in many ways, because they really feel that the policy makers, the decision makers in the region are not really up to the standards. I think we were being, maybe on civil society side, we were being more politically correct and trying to be more within the acceptable language, whether you see among the youth this a sense of needing things to change quickly. And I think this is what brings us here back to the discussion on citizens and the engagement of citizens, because the youth would be a specific group, which we saw here possibly in Kosovo more, but we saw that possibly even in our sample, the older population, brackets in which I am as well, was more prone to provide feedback rather than the youth, in addition to the first-time voters and the engagement in the policy cycle as well.
Was that one of your findings, Dragana?
Just wait for mine. My colleagues from the room would say that I'm too loud, so I can speak without mine, but I hope that you can.
Yeah, we have a shortage of microphones.
Actually, it is. The Kosovo is the only place where we actually found that even though it's a small number of experience that we gathered, the most of experience was actually from this age group, 25 to 34. But in all other countries, actually, people who wanted to share their experience are from the 30 and
About.
30 and up, above. I just wanted to comment one thing that Florian mentioned regarding the old people and those who voting for the last time, is actually that in Montenegro is also the situation when we spoke to those elderly people, they actually told us they do not want to change anything. They enjoy to be in lines, in quiz, and actually communicating with people of the same age, because this is the only activity that they actually do have, and they do not want to change anything. But we actually think that we need to find some kind of compromise and create for those young and those who actually do not have enough time to wait in quiz and lines to have their services online, to digitalize the services, and for those who want, for those last time voting persons, we actually need to ensure that they can enjoy in their only activities to the rest of their life.
Simonida, you wanted to
react?
Yes,
just to end where I was heading in terms of the engagement of the youth. I think it's essential to the argument that here was mentioned in terms of representation, bringing them on board with all of the other groups in the discussion, rather than keeping the discussion of the young people separate and then bringing them to the table, because we know there are very real policy outcomes, such as a certain referendum in a certain country in 2016, which was decided by the older population of UK, which will have a long-lasting experiences on the first time rather than the last time voters.
Right. Any questions from the floor? No? Okay, we'll go back. We'll go back here. Florian, we've had 10 minutes more. Florian, what would you say are the next steps? What does the road ahead hold for us in terms of reform of public administration here in the region? Let's say you had the ear of, well, you do have the ear of the civil society here, via them the citizens as well, and some local authorities as well.
Yeah, I think now that you did your research, you know, one question I had is, did you go back to the administration and confront them with the results and see their reaction? And I think what is next, I would look for some wins, you know. So it's such a huge field, but just take one thing that you can improve and look for some low-hanging fruits. And I think I said this before. I'm sure from your survey, there's a few things that can be quite simple. For example, you know, why do I have to stand in a queue and ask for something, you know, or could I just get it automatically, you know? So, for example, in Austria, when you give birth to a child, you have a right to children money, you know, child allowance, and before you had to apply for it, and now there is
the hospital reports it.
The hospital reports it, and you get it automatically. But it also means that you have, you know, interoperability, and for example, if you want to make life of people easier, if you practice the once-only principle that I'm sure you're familiar with. You know, a lot of queuing and standing in line will disappear. And so focus on the easy stuff, but stay engaged on the hard stuff. I'm sorry, you know, I think the customer thing is not bad, but on the citizen thing, as a citizen, I'm interested that my tax money or the state money is dealt with prudently. I think that's, you know, and all the corruption we heard, we have to stay tough on that, and also politically. But I think meanwhile, I respect a lot of the colleagues that work in the administrations, and most of them that I know, they actually want to improve things, and it's not easy for them. You know, the other thing you can do is to think, how do we navigate this world? You know, we all grew up with working in hierarchies. I'm saying we, as I'm also an administrator, by the way. But now we have to navigate a space between hierarchies, between markets, and between networks. So open up and interact and engage and see how can we do things better.
So pick the low-hanging fruits and get a ladder to reach for the ones up on the branches that are higher up. Yes, Savo, I saw you nodding as Florian started speaking.
I just wanted to answer Florian's question. So here we presented the quantitative and qualitative findings of our research, but we also worked on recommendations, and in the following period we will provide very concrete and measurable recommendations and send them to concrete institutions.
send or go and talk to them, try and persuade them, try and cajole them?
Talk to them, of course, yeah.
Is that the right way, Florian?
Yes, and do one thing that you think you can do and show a result. I think the challenge is with beautiful conferences, we talk about all the problems and nothing changes. So let's see where we can show some things getting better. We had with Maya in Skopje, we had an award, public sector award, and there we could also appreciate how there were elements of improvement.
Simonida, what are the low-hanging fruits? Where can we achieve most within the shortest period of time?
Oh, God. I don't think that we have a... Sorry about this.
Yeah, these mics are...
Keep it in my hand. Yeah. The low-hanging fruits. I think that I go back to my champions issue. I think we need to find the good examples of the institutions that also are willing to provide those low-hanging fruits to be picked up. So we have in our research, in the monitoring, in the PAR monitoring, we have identified institutions which have really advanced over this process or that are traditionally good. And I think we need to collaborate with them to also showcase that we can provide a visibility for their work and we can help them in what they are doing. I would be I would be wary of giving specific examples per countries because I think most of my colleagues are more competent on that. But I think the first low-hanging fruit is from an institution that is willing to cooperate and to set them as an example, just as RESPA did, but from the civil society it gives another form of legitimacy that we hope we can achieve.
So in North Macedonia, what would that institution be that would be most open?
Probably I'm looking at my colleague Angel here. It's the State Audit Office that's been a sort of a champion in our work in the monitor. I think it's been given as a regional example. And this is the one that can possibly serve regionally in this context.
Florian, do you agree that sort of champions or positive examples can actually be even a better motivation than permanent criticism?
I think so, and I think we should also look at what goes on in this organization. I had the pleasure to work in the Ministry of Finance in Serbia some time ago.
Is that a pleasure?
It was a pleasure in the sense that I could see that there are people that are motivated, engaged, they fight hard to improve things, but they face a lot of barriers, So I think when we look at champions, I think there are a lot of champions also in the civil service, but I think we need to look at organizational development as well. And for example, organizational learning, managing knowledge. People really don't know, and to have some input in that way.
Right. Okay, we've just got enough time for everybody to give a kind of a closing couple of sentences. What is it, Savo, let's start with you. What is it that we didn't say that you think would be important to mention at the very end? But very briefly, we have half a minute each. Well, 1 minute.
Maybe public administration body could follow our example and try to collect their own experiences from the citizens, maybe to open some website for that case. And I don't know, just listen the voice of citizens, I would say.
Doesn't sound like a bad idea at all. Dragana?
Sava just stole the sentence that I wanted to say.
You can say it again, maybe they'll hear you.
Yeah, the most important is that citizens' voice is actually to be heard from the institutions, and as we saw from the presentations, the biggest problem is actually those people working directly with the citizens. So we need some kind of strengthening their capacities, how to communicate with the citizens, because those are because of those institutions are actually existing, and it is really important when having this direct contact to be properly way and to be able to clarify the procedures, to let them finish the services they actually want, and to enable them to finish the services on the way they want, whether to be online or directly from the institutions. That's all.
Florian?
Make public administration sexy again, change organizational culture, become an attractive employer. This is how you can really change your country. We have to also have a different management culture, that you delegate more, you let teams operate on the ground and deliver, And I think we have to focus very much on the culture of the administration, and that will also then change the relation between the citizens and the state.
That will require a lot of change, because we heard on the first panel this morning that there are three problems, sort of not enough people, not enough qualified people and young people, and last of all, extremely lousy salaries.
Because it's nobody who wants to work in administration. You know, you have to, but that's the challenge. If you don't get young people, we have in the EU, I think in Germany, 60% of people in the administration will retire in the next 10 years, and nobody is coming up. This is not a Balkan problem. This is an across-the-board problem, that state is unsexy, but state is solving the problems of the people, so we have to make the state interesting for young people.
Simonida, you have the last word.
Yes, I do. I'll follow up
for
on
better words. Just hold the microphone a bit closer.
Yeah, I'll follow up on what Sava said. I mean, if the state needs to collect feedback from the citizens, but then it needs to also react on it. Because I think we did not mention that part, because all of those feedback mechanisms will be futile, and we've had a lot of experiments in the region, including in my country, that were just not followed up. So there is a need for this, but there's also a need for a sound feedback mechanism in terms of what you're actually changing, because otherwise it makes it futile at the end of the day.
Thank you all very much. You've been excellent panelists. Can I have a round of applause for these ladies and gents here? Thank you. And this brings us almost to the close, but that's somebody else's worry.
Dear guests, thank you for staying with us during the last panel. I would kindly like to invite Mr. Nicola Bertolini, Head of Cooperation of the Delegation of the European Union to the Republic of Serbia, who will deliver his closing remarks of the conference. Mr. Bertolini, the floor is yours.
Dear WeBER, dear consultants, dear friends, dear ladies and gentlemen, I know WeBER since the beginning, I think. I was the first one that in Brussels approved and processed this support, because I strongly believed in a more meaningful and vibrant civil society. In all this region, we have democracies that are still in the process. They are developing. We are checking every country yearly, and we have a lot of dialogue with all. And we see that there are a lot of challenges, still a lot of challenges. My 15 years in the Western Balkans will finish soon, and I understood only a few things. But one thing that I understood is that we need somebody to pick up citizens. If citizens are not mobilized, are not shaken, are not involved, we are doing things between institutions, civil society organizations that do not relate enough with the citizens. So, citizens first, I like very much. It's a very good slogan. It's a very good, appealing title. And I believe that without citizens and without being able to show to citizens what we do, our professional life is a bit meaningless. So we have to understand how better to involve citizens. I heard good things from two countries that I love because I've been there, Montenegro and North Macedonia. The process is moving. There are good development about the relation between civil society, the government, the public administration. And there are still very challenges from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So and for Serbia. So we are in a process. I hoped after 15 years to see some results. It's difficult, but I can see some results. But of course, this is a long process. The public administration, local and central, is the first phase of a state towards the citizens. And the citizens have to be organized, have to be better channeled. Their intentions, their voices have to be better channeled. With a public administration reform process accompanying the accession process into the European Union, one of the important components is how to involve the society. There is a civil society, there are the citizens. And I think that this is still a big challenge in the Western Balkans. And you will have us to support this process constantly, continuously, and with more and more efforts. So I think that everybody that looks at a better involvement of a society in this region should be optimist, because things are coming and are improving. If somebody looks back, you can notice in different countries developments. For instance, I remember that when I was directly dealing with civil society in Brussels, and we started this process of the guidelines for the support of civil society in the Western Balkans and Turkey. So we got a lot of organization involved in this process, and this was excellent, because also gave to my colleagues in Brussels some meaningful understanding why we support civil society. Because it's not because we have some money to spend that we launch a call for proposal and we support civil society. So there is a meaningful path there. And every time, just leave me doing some points about Serbia, every time I was coming to Belgrade, which is not Serbia, it's Belgrade, in my mission report, I was always saying we need to employ psychologists to explain to civil society and to the government that dialogue is something good. So, and after 10 years, coming back again to Serbia with a different role, I found that this is happening. So we should support this, because if something does not happen every day, it can happen later. So this is important, the Council for Cooperation within civil society and the government. This is not the panacea of everything, absolutely. But this is a very important forum where the civil society should be very responsible, because the government will be less responsible. The government will do this, okay, let's satisfy a little bit the civil society always. But the civil society has a role to do it in the right way, with full representativeness, full rotation possibilities. So members of civil society who will sit in that council should be very active. And we are also going to support this, so because we think that the dialogue is important. So as I said, the region shows different examples of how citizens and civil society participate in the policy dialogue, in the dialogue at the local level, at central level. I notice here there are some improvements. The new government started with some good elements, and we are not going to be repeated twice to work with this, because we have to work with this. No matter if we like or we don't like, we have to engage, and we are engaged. So I think that your network, WeBER, which is a very important monitoring of how this process is doing in the whole region should continue. You are not finished, because we are not yet there with a full functioning democracy, with all the different level of communication between different groups, different citizens, and the different powers. So I think this meeting showed good results, but that the road is still long, and I'm very happy to answer to Milena and come here and be with you for a while. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bertolini. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Milena Lazarevic will now lead us through the final messages by the organizers of the third regional conference, Citizens First, the European Policy Center Belgrade and the Think for Europe network. Milena, please.
Thank you, Milos. I am proud and happy today because I really think, and this is not just, the organizer commending their own event, but I really feel and I really think that we have had a great conference, a really dynamic, substantive event filled with good discussions and from which we can take some good lessons and good recommendations for our future work, but where I feel that all of you will take something with you back to your jobs. As WeBER, we have definitely matured. We started back in December 2015 after DG NEAR approved our first project, and we are now nearing the finalization of the second project, and we have already submitted and we are awaiting the final decision on the third project cycle. Why do I say that we have matured? The WeBER initiative started with the ratio, with the rationale, the idea that only if we create civil society-driven pressures towards administrations in terms of monitoring and assessing the work and the quality of the administrations in the period leading up to our regions and our country's accession to the EU, will we be able to sustain the same kind of pressure in the post-accession period? And we drew that lesson from the experiences of the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, which experienced a lot of backsliding after EU accession because suddenly Sigma, OECD and European Commission were not there anymore to, as Tina said today, to somehow steer, and hold the compass for the governments. So the government started doing whatever they wanted. They started to repoliticize the administration, to close down processes, etc. So we wanted to kind of, prepare the civil society to continue doing what Sigma is doing today, for example, and what the European Commission is doing, to continue doing that after the accession. But why do I say that we have matured? Because over the past 7 years, we have actually realized that as civil society, we cannot speak without the voice of the citizens, and that creation of this kind of pressure is not only about monitoring the administrations. We have continued, and we have, we are still doing the monitoring, and we still believe that providing evidence on the results of the reforms, of the outcomes of the reforms is important, but we actually understand now much better that we will be much more persuasive, and this bottom-up pressure will be created in a much more effective way if we actually manage to empower the citizens. And this is why I'm really happy and proud and glad that with each new conference, we speak more about citizens, and we are, living up to this idea of putting citizens first. Unlike the previous conference, where we only had one citizen panel, in this conference, we actually provided examples and we spoke about experiences from 25 different citizen consultations which were implemented all around the region. And we actually drew some very valuable lessons learned from our European experience and EU-based experts and civil society experts on how we could further improve those processes in the future. And definitely the next WeBER project will implement those recommendations and will try to go beyond consultation, what Tina mentioned today, and to go really towards empowerment of citizens. So really putting ourselves, all of ourselves, into the shoes of us as citizens and really working with citizens to solve concrete problems and offer concrete recommendations to the policymakers. We also compared progress between the countries. We communicated to you the results of the WeBER monitoring, the PAR monitor, and we invite you to read our monitoring reports once they are out early next year. We will have country-based presentations and discussions on the PAR monitor package somewhere in spring next year, and I'm sure that the value of the WeBER recommendations based on the monitoring will continue to inform both the EU's policies but also our regional governments' policies on public administration reform. And I was particularly happy and proud to hear, for example, from the advisor of the Macedonian Minister of Public Administration, that they're already taking our recommendations in terms of how to structure the new coordination mechanisms for the new strategy and to try to involve civil society organizations not only on the administrative level but also on the political level of public administration reform coordination. This is where we see impact. And you know, this is what we can only hope for, that what we do here doesn't only stay in the conference room, that it doesn't only stay in our nice and nicely edited and designed reports, but that it actually turns into real policy. We discussed today some examples from citizen consultations. We discussed some stories and feedback from the citizens. And what we definitely, I think, could observe is that regardless of the fact that we are 6 countries, citizens face very similar problems. So this means that it really does make sense to have these discussions at the regional level. One of the grantees said today that, you know, regional exchanges are extremely important for them. So we will try to continue also, like we did in this conference, to create a venue also for local organizations from across the region to get to know each other, to get together, and we will even try to upscale this in the next conference and bring more local organizations together to exchange regionally. Bringing the voice of citizens to the policymakers is not easy, and I'm sure it will not be easy. You cannot imagine how hard it is to get a meeting with a minister, even when you come with the voice of the citizens. But this doesn't mean that we should give up. We will continue also doing what we have done so far, which is, you know, using the boomerang technique, where we send our recommendations to Brussels, and then they come back as a boomerang to our governments. We have to resort to that as well, because sometimes the governments don't really have the ear for us. But somebody mentioned today, and I think, yes, it was Maya, that, you know, we have really allies in hardworking professional civil servants. Some of them are here with us today, and I'm grateful for their support, because they are very often the Don Quixotes in their own institutions. They're the ones actually fighting for reforms to happen, even when political leaders and their ministers are not willing to implement those reforms. We have to continue creating and building these alliances, because in the end, we all go back to being citizens, we all go back to being mothers, fathers, wanting to build a better society for ourselves and for our children, and this is why we will continue to put citizens first. Thank you very much. I wish you a good return to your homes for all of our colleagues who came from other different countries from the region. And for the end, just one last thing, which I know sometimes is maybe boring, but it is necessary. First, I would like to thank our donors, the European Union, the European Commission, first of all, and our co-financing donor also, the Royal Norwegian Embassy here in Belgrade, and the Balkan Trust for Democracy of the German Marshall Fund of the US, who have co-financed this event. I want to thank my STAR team. You cannot imagine how difficult it is to organize an event like this. First of all, Jovan and Anessa, who have worked relentlessly over the past 2 weeks. And then, of course, the rest of the team from CEP that has organized this event, which is Miloš, the lead researcher, Sav and Milica, who have also contributed in the research activities, Branko, Stefan, and Vladimir, who have worked on the spin-off project of WeBER, and whose interesting presentation you heard this morning in the other venue. Our trainees, who were also very helpful in organizing this event. And of course, the rest of the WeBER team from the entire region. And I need to read everyone's names because I don't want anyone to feel left out. Alban Dafa, Iliada Korčari, Ina Šempalaku, Marko Sošić, Dragana Jacimović, Ana Đurnić, Haris Ćutahija, Zvonimira Jakić, Julijana Karaj, Angel Mojkovski, Vaska Ristovska, Lirika Agušoli, Ema Pula, Agon Ziberi. And of course, our partners from European Policy Center in Brussels. Corina Stratolat left already, but you all heard her moderation yesterday. It's a big team. WeBER is a big endeavor, and I really do hope that we will continue to do this job and to do it even better in the future. Thank you very much.